All right, we are recording, Mike, and I'm going to
Great.
turn it over to you. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for coming and connecting with us
appreciate that.
virtually on Zoom.
Yeah, welcome to our Oregon Learners Prep class today. Of course, we are chatting and connecting via a new technology. For many of us, we're all learning this new technology. Again, I appreciate everybody coming out, and we're going to do our best to try to walk through the DMV manual. Of course, this year we've got an update, so some changes and things we want to look at, okay? So I just want to jump in a little bit. As we jump into the book, if you have it, it's great. I would like you to consider maybe highlighting and making annotations in the book. But as we look at it, I'm going to give you some updates also about DMV because we did get some information about DMV. Let me cover that a little bit right now. So currently, they are only doing appointments for certain activities. So if you can do some transactions over on the online portion, they would like you to do that. But certain face-to-face activities like renewing your license, like getting your permit, those kinds of things, you would need to make an appointment and call a number specifically. And I can provide that to you at the end or toward one of our breaks, okay? There is still a wait on what they're doing for drive tests. Right now, there are only 4 what they call third-party approved third-party testers that would test for DMV. They're about the only places open. One is up in Newport currently. So until we know officially how DMV wants to handle with COVID and putting themselves in a car with an unknown person, we're going to kind of wait on this right at this point, okay? So we got to get the license portion, and part of that license portion is a series of steps we got to do. So right away, we've got to have a vision test, a knowledge test, and a drive test. Those are all the main components as it is currently written in the book today for the current version, the 2021 book, okay? So vision tests, of course, are going to validate your eyes. They want to make sure you can see safely. I mean, there's a lot of things about driving that you need to, our vision is really key and critical to those functions. And so decisions we make have to be made mostly with our eyes. So if you wear glasses, you want to, or contacts, you definitely want to make sure you have those with you when you go to get your eyes checked at DMV. It's just a really quick check. They just want to see if you have a certain level of vision that's acceptable for most drivers today, okay? If you don't pass that particular test, they would give you a paper or form that you can now take to a vision specialist so that you can go ahead and get your eyes checked and maybe determine some sort of corrective action, okay? So the next part is that knowledge test. Again, today, you have to make an appointment to get in there. It was normally you just show up and pull a ticket and wait in line, but today you'll have to call. It is a 35-question test, multiple guess, basically. You have to get at least 28 answers correctly done. And the way the system works is if you get to maybe 24 questions and all of a sudden the test is off or shut down, that would probably mean you didn't pass the test. So they don't want you to just keep going and going beyond. So normally it just shuts down. The current fee is about $5 for that test today. So safe drivers practice test. So this is kind of after, and only really for our younger generation. So 15 to 17 would now need to take a safe practices driving test, which is free. And usually it's done after you've been driving for a period of at least 6 months with a permit over age of 16. Then you would go in and take this test. If you pass, then you would of course have your driver's test if you do that function going through a driving test portion. And then you would go ahead, they would issue you a license, okay? There's no fee for this one. Generally, this is a lot easier than the permit tests. So permit tests tend to be more challenging. This one, after you've been practicing and driving, does seem to work really well. So rules, of course, for the knowledge test, again, it does come in varying languages, and they really want to help you pass the test. They're giving you some tools. If you need an audio assistance, you can do that. You can definitely get some special accommodations, but I recommend that you at least take the test at least twice. And then if you're still failing the test, you can always ask them, what area specifically in the book do I need to really study or know? And that's kind of what you want to do. Think about, because many students may go through 2 or 3 or more failures and they want to find out what they need to actually study on, okay? So it's good to ask. You definitely want to talk to them in advance, especially for special accommodations. Basically, you would be there testing only. You can have an authorized translator if there is a need for that. They're only a touchscreen monitored system, so you can also bring your headphones so you can hear more clearly for the questions as they get read across the computer, okay? So of course you can't use the DMV manual, it's a closed book test. Sorry guys, you gotta know the knowledge and be able to respond to the questions. Really what I tell folks when you take the test, the answer may not be right directly out of the book, it's gonna be what's best for the situation, for that question, what would be the best answer, and that's really what you wanna do. So of course, with permission, you may use a paper foreign language translator or type of dictionary. And what they do is they record every test. So there's lots of cameras up above, and they review those. And if they think that for some reason you might have cheated, and here's some of the reasons and how they might look at those, then you would be considered a fail, okay? So of course, no talking or writing or taking of notes. Cell phone use, of course, is not allowed. Any type of electronic devices, anything really to help you advance is considered cheating, okay? So if you fail the knowledge test, you gotta wait at least 1 day. If you fail 4 or more times, you're gonna have to wait at least 28 days before continuing to take it again, okay? If you're required of special accommodations, again, take the knowledge test, contact the local office. It's really good to just stay in contact with them. They wanna help you. That's what they're here to do for you, okay? So next, of course, is the drive test. This one is always the one that causes a lot of kind of scare and concern and some anxieties. As I deal with many students, really getting prepped and ready for this drive test can get really stressful. So really what they're doing is they want to evaluate your driving. Can you drive based on the permit? And hopefully you've practiced, can you demonstrate your skills, including knowledge and traffic laws, highway signs, signals, and a whole plethora of other things that may come your way. The test includes turning, backing up, parking, lane changes, good speed control, signaling, overall vehicle control, and general drivability. The examiner will sit really, and this is based on the book currently today, guys, so I don't know what COVID tomorrow looks like, but this is what the book says. Today, what we have in the book, the examiner would sit next to you in the front seat. They would give you instructions or directions. They generally are going to tell you how to back up. They're not here to teach you, but they will give you directions. They'll tell you where to turn and what to do next. And your job is really just to follow their instructions. After that drive, they will do an evaluation, and then you can go through and discuss any of the results that might be there, okay? So the couple options, and this is where my program kind of comes into play here. Through our program and some of our students, one of our students is actually on today, her brother and sister were able to come through our classes. And so there's a way to get away from the drive test and not actually do that if you attend an ODOT approved course. So we have an ODOT approved course and you take it, you get a certificate card. Upon completion, basically you've done the drive test through our program, and then you can simply just turn that in and get your license. So that's a venue, it's available. We do have classes available this summer, so it's nice. Check out our website to do that. Drive test, of course, you got a call, you want to set up an appointment, you want to be there, you've got to have, of course, your car with valid proof of insurance. Really, the car itself just needs to be functioning in a lot of major areas. So mirrors and windows all cleaned and things all functioning, basically. Once those are set and ready, you come to your test, you pay your fee, and then hopefully with success, you can pass your drive test. Generally lasts about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 minutes kind of discussion afterwards, okay? So here's what the manual really, what we're gonna try to cover today. This is the 7 kind of chapters really that you need to study. So if this other stuff we just talked about really is just information, general information we need to know about. But now we're going to jump into it. So right away, signals and signs, lanes, turning sections, sharing the road, railroad crossings, light rail, streetcars, parking, stopping, and safe driving, responsible driving. So some big sections and some small sections. Again, we'll take a break again at 11:30. We'll try to keep track of that, and we'll go from there, guys. So if you're ready, we'll jump right in. because we got to get going. This is really the start of your careers, the start of your livelihood. Really, without a license, many people don't have jobs. It's really a challenge today without those things. And so here's my opportunity to give you a little bit, impart some knowledge, and hopefully start your road of, thank you, start your road of driving and being successful on the highways and byways today, okay? All right, so chapter 1, signs and traffic signals. So we got a whole slather of these kinds of signs and signals that are out there today. We must obey all of them, all official signs, signals, markings, unless you see a police officer or road worker, construction person, really directing the traffic flow. So, and here's just a small sample of the pictures. You see them. Of course, signs, they often use symbols or pictures. A lot of times they use a lot of color. So each type of sign is really important. We need to know the type of sign because it's important for us to recognize. Even if we are a little bit colorblind, it's okay to drive even being colorblind. Now it's the shapes that really play a factor. So regulatory signs, though, they are more kind of controlling. So they give us more prohibitive type of activities we can do or not do. So those signs provide certain type of actions, maybe limit certain movements. They generally are red in color and increase the safety by controlling the flow of traffic through intersections. So here's some of those regulatory signs. We see them all the time as we drive. The shape, remember the shape. So the shape of an octagon, generally if you're looking at it, stop sign. I call it upside down triangle. It's a yield sign. And a big one a lot of people kind of miss, but again, it's important to really pay attention to, is a do not enter, because really you might be going the wrong way. So it's really important for us to focus on these types of signs. So again, these are more giving direction, so where we cannot do. So one thing I noticed with this online, I don't have my annotate tool, so I'm not sure if you see my mouse, but the no left turn and the no right turn, that circle with the hash, whatever's in the middle, you're not allowed to do, okay? So in this case, no lefts, no rights, and then again, no right, no U-turns. So then they come again in a variety of different actions that we're not allowed to do in different intersections that you may confront. So here's some regulatory signs, and we see these again. You'll see these as you may be driving with your folks or your family or others. These, of course, they come in a black and white right away. We know it's a regulatory. They have words or symbols. They generally on a white background and very, very contrasting colors, which is really important. They may be posted alone or with other traffic signs in conjunction, and not all regulatory signs are shown here. So just a small sample here: speed limits and one-way signs and right turns permitted without stopping and so forth. So again, these are really important to know, kind of recognize them, understand them. So here's another round. Again, white and black, generally in that kind of shape where it's more of a portrait shape or a landscape shape, depending on the type of condition and controls. So some more ones. Again, as we go into bigger cities, sometimes we end up with these lower one here, the high occupancy vehicles. So HOV, these are more controlling in a multi-lane road where now you can travel a little bit faster. It's kind of what we call the faster passing lane, which is all the way toward the center, the left lane. And we're allowed to travel with 2 or more in that lane. It allows us to go faster than the main flow of traffic. It's important to read it because look, again, the lower portion allows only the certain time frame. So if you're outside of those time frames, we as a single driver may be able to use that space, which is kind of nice for us to do. So warning signs, though, notice right away the colors changed. We got a yellow background with black lettering. It's telling us, it's warning us there's issues, there may be problems. In this case, pedestrian crossings, multi-use path, which is simply a multi-use lane. We got to be careful with bicyclists and pedestrians that may be crossing our path. It's our job as a driver to ultimately be responsible for recognizing, reacting correctly to changing conditions. Not all of the warning signs, again, are listed here. It's just a small sample. DMV really would have a book that may be hundreds of pages versus the 75 or 77 we are currently today. So a lot of times what we see when we travel is these curve signs. It's important to catch a curve, know when a curve in the road to the left or the right is. So notice the first one says right curve, and usually these are more of a shallow turn, but the next one is a sharp curve, and they generally are very sharp, and you need to approach these with caution and speed controls. Another one is a chevron. It directs the change in the flow of the road, and they may come in a series, more than one, sometimes just one, okay? Again, winding roads and crossroads, reverse curving roads, all kinds of different warning signs telling us that there's things or changes in our roadway that maybe from where we are now, we need to be considerate of what's in front of us. And again, more T's, merging, and of course, we see a lot of the lane reduction signs here. So we'll go from a 1 lane to a 2, and then from a 2 to a 1. So constantly looking for those adjustments. We don't want to be caught in the wrong side. We want to make those changes so they give us advance warning so we can make a lane change to go in the lane that's now staying open. So two-way traffic flow, again, identifies the flow of traffic in a certain area where you're at the current time. Might have a divided highway that begins or ends, a stop sign that might be ahead, a signal light that might be ahead. Again, some of these signs really are, well, yeah, of course there's a stop sign, or well, of course there's a signal ahead, but where you might see that sign, you may not really see it because you're in the bottom of a hill, and of course you're not able to see the particular lights or stop sign ahead of you until you get there. So they give you advanced warning for purposes just like that. Again, reductions in speed, roundabouts, and of course railroad crossings. Lots of railroad crossings here in Coos Bay. We've got many of those. It's important to know about those, and here's one way to do that. Low clearance. Well, why do I care about low clearance, right? Well, low clearance might not be for you specifically, but for folks who travel, maybe pull a trailer or have a large rig, maybe they do some other activities with bigger items like a sailboat or something large. They need to know the height of an overpass before they go underneath it and possibly cause some serious damage or destroy their livelihood. So here's a hill, steep downgrades, and usually I see those in our travels. We do travel across the country between here and Arizona. Lots of hills, guys. So they usually come in a percentage downgrade. So 2, 4, 6, 7%, and those tend to be very, very steep, 8% downgrades. Advisory speeds, again, just an advisory speed. Maybe you're getting off of the freeway from the highway speeds of 55, 60, 65, and now the exit might be 25 or 35. And so we want to get to those speeds safely so we don't get in trouble. So these also may be electronic. So what we might see in a bigger town like in Portland and in Salem and Eugene is instead of having a hard regulatory sign that's white and black, they'll have an advisory speed that's more digital, so it can change based on the conditions of the roadway. So normally it's 65, but now because of a crash ahead, they don't want you driving at 65, they want you at 45 or 35. And so now we'll see a digital version of those instead of a placard like we see here. Roadways might be slippery when wet, and of course, lots of animals on the roadway. So one of the animals we see is in Nevada, they really want us to watch for turtles. So here in Oregon, we don't have a lot of turtle crossings, but we have lots of deer, elk, and those kinds of things. So route signs are also just as important too. It really gives us the direction and the flow and the route we are particularly on. So of course, here's Interstate 5, US Highway. Notice kind of the shape of the US Highway 22. It's like a shield. And then state routes. So they all kind of correlate. They sometimes connect together between them, and it's important just to recognize the types of roads that we may be on. Excuse me. So guide signs are green. You'll see the quick color change. So we're heading to Madras or Bend, and notice the shield. That's a US route. See it right away. You can tell right away this is a US route to Madras or Bend. And of course, if we're getting off at an exit, this happens to be exit 128. So the number correlates, you'll find out later, it correlates to a mile marker relationship to the road you happen to be on. Safety corridor signs, and these are really designs for roads and highways where maybe there's more fatalities or serious crashes in that general area. So they really would like to have your headlights on for safety reasons during that time, because as we learned in driving and teaching, having your headlights on all the time allows traffic even ahead of you in the daylight to see you much, much better than you really think. So we like to have our headlights on at all times when we travel. So these signs here will identify areas or corridors that may include some sort of diamond-shaped flags also. Here's some brown. Also, again, color changes, a lot of color changes. So here we go, historic and cultural, recreational, and you name it. All kinds of fun activities and places to go. So these are more for information about points of interest and places to go, campgrounds, merely there's great little spots, you know, state parks and wildlife viewing areas and so forth. So these are also just as important to recognize too. So some motor service signs that we might see, these blue signs, again, general information signs that tell us about different services. And the easiest one we could pick up, of course, is the H, which is the hospital, could be a rest area, phone service, lodging, you name it. So in these larger highways we travel, Interstate 5, we can kind of recognize a bigger sign, which now has all of the different things we want to go to. Maybe it might be food. So here's a whole series of food choices that are available at the next exit. Or here's a rest area that's coming ahead of us and we want to get off and take a break. Or there's gas or food or other type of lodging services available to us. And if we need to know where the hospital is, they would post an H at that exit we would want to take off. And you can just simply follow those H's all the way to the hospital. So next area is traffic signs and signals. We got to kind of figure these out. So they're just as important, just like a stop sign, a regulatory, those octagon-shaped red color stop signs or yield signs. Knowing the signal lights and how they work is just as important too, okay? So traffic signals control the right-of-way and provide for smooth, orderly flow of traffic. If a signal, of course, appears dark, we have a lot of power outs here in Oregon and especially on the coast. We got to treat that now like a big four-way, multi-point stop, okay? So if there isn't a stop sign in all directions, you just treat it as, again, like a stop. When a traffic signal is out of order and flashes yellow or red, you've got to obey that signal color, whatever it happens to be. So a steady red, a red signal means stop and remain stopped until the signal changes. You can't run the red light. That's a quick ticket. We don't want those kinds of things. It's important for us to look at the light, kind of pay attention to it. You get to your intersection, you see the light, you watch the light, but you're also looking for other clues too. So when entering a two-way road, you may turn right. When entering a one-way road, you may turn right or left. It just depends on the flow of the traffic when you get to this red light, okay? So flashing red signal is treated just the same as a stop sign. So kind of the lower picture in my slide, you might see this coming at an intersection. And again, it's just like a stop sign. You're going to need to stop and wait, search for it to be clear before you continue forward or turn. A red arrow, a steady red arrow, really is the same as a circle red arrow. You're going to need to stop until the signal changes, except for allowed turns on a red, which would be a one-way, okay? The same turns allowed for a steady red signal are allowed for a red arrow also. So now a steady yellow signal, of course, is warning you that the signal is about to turn red. So a transition is green, yellow, red. So in that yellow kind of transition period, you can, and you really should, before entering, you need to stop. But there is a time when you can't get there, and we say that's called the point of no return. You want to go ahead and continue. You want to drive through safely. It doesn't mean accelerate. A lot of folks say, well, I can go faster. that's the time you can get a ticket also. So even if you do run a yellow light, you run the risk of getting a ticket too. You just need to be cautious and careful doing that. So flashing yellow, again, the same as a flashing red, except we're not stopping this time. We just need to slow down. We got to proceed with caution. We're going to look and search to make sure there's nobody else jumping in front of our path and place where we're going to put our car through that intersection. So yellow arrow, here's a steady yellow arrow. This one again warns you that the signal is about to turn red. Stop before entering the intersection. If you cannot stop safely, drive carefully through it. Again, just be cautious running a yellow light. Flashing yellow arrows, again, flashing yellow arrow means that you may make the movement indicated by the arrow, but you've got to yield to pedestrians and oncoming traffic. We call it an unprotected left turn. And so when you see that flashing yellow, I always watch for oncoming, look for pedestrians that may be there in your left turn. If it's clear on both sides, then you can proceed safely through it, okay? A steady green though, that's a little different. The green signal means that all movements straight, ahead, left, or right are permitted unless prohibited by some sort of sign. So it's kind of like a protected turn, left or right, with that green arrow. A green arrow, steady green, means you have the right of way and may make the movement indicated in the flow of the arrow, okay? All right, so that's chapter 1. If you have questions that are almost direct answers from the book, but really it's about how should I respond to this situation, and that's kind of how the questions are for the for your permit test, okay? So lane travel, let's go into lane travel. So of course, we want to drive on the right side of the road. So that's something that's always hard for us to think about. So when we travel, you just maybe step outside of your driveway or maybe outside of your apartment or your house or where you work, and you look at the roadway and you say, well, yeah, most cars are traveling on that right side. That's where we need to be. And that's the truth. If you go to a different country now, maybe UK or others, Germany, they may be on the left side, and that's where the challenge is for us. We want to stay to the right. Always think we got to be on the right. So drive on the right side of the road, except for these certain actions. So passing, of course, which now we get to move to the left side, but we don't really stay there the whole time. We just get around, maybe a slow vehicle, maybe a delivery truck or some other activity that we need to avoid. Driving to the left of center, again, to pass an obstruction. We get to do that also. Maybe a road hazard, we call them road alligators. A roadway, of course, is marked for one-way travel flow. So we got to be moving in maybe the same direction. So instead of us staying on the right, we can now move to the left. So like downtown Coos Bay or downtown North Bend, we have one-way travel flows. A road has 3 marked lanes, and the center now is what they call a passing lane, or directed by emergency personnel or other persons directing traffic. So these are the kinds of decisions making that change from the right to the left. When a road has no center line or traffic moves in opposite directions, drivers must give at least half of the road to oncoming traffic. These are places like residential areas, and that's really where we start our beginning drives as we practice. So if you must drive on the left or the center, go around a road hazard for any other reason, you must yield the course, because really think about it, you have the right of way on the right. Guess what? So does the traffic flowing the other direction. They would think that, hey, I got the right of way. So now if you come across them, you really want to yield to that oncoming traffic. It's really important to do that. So of course, there'll be times when you need to yield so other vehicles can proceed. Yielding means you must slow down or stop to allow another vehicle or pedestrian to continue safely. So really, whenever you drive, think yield. I got to think about yielding situations in many, many different ways. So here's one way. We may need to yield to another vehicle, and then once they clear, then we may use that space that was there for them first. There will be times when you need to yield so other vehicles can proceed. Again, be ready to slow or stop. Let that vehicle, pedestrian, or others go first to continue safely. Stop before entering a crossroad or from an alleyway. So let's say you're leaving Pony Village Mall, or I'm trying to think of a better location. Maybe it's your driveway from your house or a store. You look across the street. Well, guess what? There isn't going to be a stop sign there. because we as drivers need to know that whenever I leave a parking lot, my driveway, before I hit the roadway, I've got to come to a stop. It's important we do that. Otherwise, we would have stop signs all over the place, just to remind us. So stop before entering a crossroad. Really, we just did that. Change lanes only when you can do so safely, and try to avoid those frequent lane changes. So keep them down kind of to a minimum instead of zipping. I see a lot of cars as we travel, California, Nevada, Arizona, they're just constantly bouncing, and that creates a big hazard for a lot of roadway users. So speed regulation. So this is a big one. I tell folks, study this, really kind of know this basic rule. Not that you need the details, but think about what it's telling you, okay? So the basic rule law basically states that you must drive at a speed that is reasonable and cautious for existing conditions. The basic rule applies for all roads at all times. So simply think, if the speed says 45, but it's raining really hard or very foggy, I can't see, I can drop the speed to what would be a safer speed for us to drive at that moment. See it? So that's kind of what the basic law allows us to do. We cannot really go over the speed limit, but really we can drop the speed to be more cautious for the conditions. So simply obey the basic rule. Think about your speed in relation to others, pedestrians and bicycle users, the surface of the road, the width, any hazards that might be there, weather, visibility, you name it. All kinds of factors can affect that speed regulation decision. The basic rule does not allow you to drive over the speed limit. Really, think about it. You don't want to get a ticket. You want to get a ticket? Of course not. That can be very expensive. If you drive at any speed that is unsafe for existing conditions in any area at any time, even if it's slower, so now you might get in trouble here, you are violating the basic rule. So now the weather is good, but you're traveling 20 under. So now you become a hazard for all the others having to go around you. So this is where that can be also a big issue too, okay? So no slow drivers. All right, so speed limits. Again, we got to kind of think about speed. This is that regulatory, remember regulatory signs, black and white. So in addition to the basic rule, we got these maximum speed limits. So it's important to kind of look at these as you travel in different locations. And we may or may not see these signs. So that's another thing you got to think about. So in our courses, we like to show folks here, this is what it looks like. This is what you should do based on visual maybe versus signage that you might not see. So speed limit of 15 miles an hour. So think about like an alleyway that's really, really short. The width of the road might be no more than 30, say 15 to 20 feet. A normal alleyway or normal roadway might be 30 or more feet wide. But these are now about half, so 15 to 20 feet wide. And there's barely enough room really for a couple of cars to go by, maybe one if you're lucky. And so the speed really is a lot less. So about 15 is the max. So any business districts, so places where services are happening, maybe products are moving from one lot to the next, and you got deliveries, and even within a school zone, think about school zones, here we go, 20. So now you're in that wider kind of residential area. We have a lot of those all over. 25 is the max. Near a public park, 25. Ocean shores, again, if your vehicles are permitted, 25. So 55 though on all roads and highways not meeting any other definition otherwise posted. So a lot of highways, state highways particularly, Highway 101, that'll be our max speed. So interstate though, I-5, and this is really, it varies, that's kind of a base number, but it could go as high as 75 in some locations to 55 in some locations, just depending on where you're at. So really important to pay attention to those speeds, especially as you travel, because things will change. And you thought you were going the right speed, and you might be over really quickly when you get to an area where it's a lot slower. So of course, speed limits. Slower drivers, if you drive slower than the normal speed of traffic, you must use the right lane. Again, stay that right lane. You always want to stay to the right because you're kind of going a little bit slower than the average flow. Or a driver as closely as possible to the right curb or edge of the road unless you are preparing to make that turn to the left, okay? Watch for congestion behind you. If you drive slower than the designated speed, pull off the road at the first safe area and let the traffic behind you pass. So there are places you might not have a passing lane, so we want to allow traffic to go around us safely. And so racing, you got a nice little picture up there, not allowed, right? We can't do racing, it's illegal. There are places to go if you want to do that. There's some fun places to go, like Portland International Raceway. There's other places in the state that have those kind of things where you can take your car and drive and go kind of quick, safely. So remember, stay to the right. Slower traffic always stays to the right. It's really important, especially as beginning drivers. Think about it. You really don't want to get in the fast lane. You really want to start kind of working and maintaining your speed. So that's always a challenge for new drivers, is kind of maintaining constant speed, especially traveling a lot faster. So now pavement markings. So another area we need to know. Oregon's pavement markings, they really follow what we think is the national standard. So think about it. Instead of Oregon having our own standard, we follow everybody's standard. So we all have the same thing. You can go to California, Nevada, you can go to Washington. They'll all be relatively the same kind of markings, which is really nice. So yellow markings, as you can see in the picture there, they're designating a separate traffic flow. So flows are going basically two separate directions, okay? Two-way lanes, again, left turn lanes and painted medians. So instead of physically putting something in the middle, they sometimes will create a wider space. So you'll see some of those markings where it kind of goes from a nice clean 2 lanes, and then all of a sudden it goes wide with these little hash marks. Well, that's kind of a painted median. A solid yellow, they've also they mark the edge of the roadway to the left for each of the travel flows here. And then of course, broken, you'll see the next one here for broken, indicates that traffic can also flow same opposite direction, but now passing is allowed. So solid, no passing, broken, passing. Again, passing, when you pass, you really want to pass cautiously. You're kind of borrowing the space in the left just for a moment, but you want to yield to oncoming traffic, okay? So paved markings, here again, double center line consisting of solid yellow and now a broken. So this gets a little kind of confusing when you see this. You are here, and really we are paying attention to the line closest to us. So if I'm here in this lane traveling kind of south or down to the bottom of my screen, they have a solid line, but the other lane has a broken line. So quick question, which lane can pass, which lane cannot pass, right? So the right lane can pass, but the left lane going down cannot pass. But now the next screen, neither can pass. So again, you're following the closest line to your car, and so now neither lane can pass for whatever reason it happens to be. So like the issues with the roadway and so forth. So another special yellow marked area we'll see in many locations really is this 2-way special lane. We call it a shared left turning lane. So the shared left turning lane is really critical for us to get out of the main flow, get into the center space. You'll notice the kind of upside down and right side up arrows. Again, traffic can flow in both directions and come in. Again, you got to be cautious because you may have a car that's also entering as you're entering. You're both making left turns, but you've got to watch for that, okay? So what's illegal though is to hop in and then ramp up to increase speed, staying in the middle so you can now merge to the right. So that's what they call an illegal travel, okay? You can enter it, stop, and then move to the right when it's safe to proceed, but you can't use it like an acceleration lane or a speed lane to now enter that moving lanes to the right, okay? So I want to show you a video. Hopefully this works, guys. Let's see if this is working. It's a YouTube connection here. Let's see if it works. Kind of a nice little video showing us the shared lane action. All right, bandwidth. I'm going to pause it, give it a chance to kind of buffer a little bit, get ahead. I'm going to make it big.
Mike, did you share the video screen?
I'm going to pause it. I know. I'm doing it.
Okay, cool.
My problem is I got to get the video in and then loaded. So.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Now I'm sharing it. So you.
Excellent.
Now.
Thank you. Perfect.
Right. There you go, guys. Metal fences over here.
Mike, the video's kind of choppy on my end.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was afraid of. All right. I thought that would be an issue. So videos, unfortunately, tend to be a little bit of a problem. So we might avoid some of those. I'll make them available on the share or after class. You can email me if you'd like. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
That we'll do. Yeah, I
Mike,
was kind of afraid. Yeah, go ahead.
if you wanted to, you could also share them into the, like, link them into the little chat, and people could go to YouTube real quick and watch them as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, my problem is I'll have to get out between the sessions. I will do that. Okay. Yeah, I have to get into the presentation and kind of get that link and then copy it. So without stopping it, it's kind of hard. I do appreciate.
We can always throw those links up during the break.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And you're awesome. No, it's just throwing out some shoots.
Cool. No, I like the idea. I appreciate it. So pavement markings, here's some of those pavement markings as we continued here. So this is this kind of median area that we're talking about. You sometimes have that double yellow, again, solid yellow lines. Areas, again, where you're not supposed to be, your car's not supposed to travel. Again, what's happening is the lanes may be expanding or changing for various reasons, maybe making a turning lane, maybe pushing us out of a way for certain objects that might be in the roadway itself. Again, another version of that same thing, an ending of a lane, collapsing of a lane. So instead of putting us in the center, they're really moving us to the left or the right, depending on the direction we're going, okay? So these are, again, not areas where we're supposed to be. These are kind of, instead of putting a physical barrier, they use the painted lines to keep us separate without us causing any issues if we accidentally hit a barrier. So no barriers, just a painted median. So here's another round. Again, these are yellow diagonal stripes. And these, again, keep us here. We have some sort of a physical barrier that they're kind of protecting us from. Until we get around that, then we're allowed to get into what would be a turning lane at this point. So again, separating the traffic flow, keeping us safe as where we can. So now roadway markings, a change here is the white markings. So now they're here. These are kind of edge roadway markings you'll see on a highway. You got the center broken yellow, so that means two-way traffic flow. But we really don't know what the right side looks like. So as a visual, we need to see both the left and the center and a marking of some kind on the right. So this would also mark the edge of the roadway, which is important for us. They call it a fog line or edge line. Again, it helps us stay in the roadway, especially at nighttime. It really gets dicey when it's nighttime, because without those lines, we're pretty much driving kind of blind. It really is a critical piece of our vision we need to see as we're traveling. So here's a different kind of markings we see generally up at the beginning or the start of a intersection. They're, again, solid. They show a marking for the stop line. I'm kind of pointing that out here as we get to maybe a turning lane. It separates it with a solid line just before that. It also could direct traffic in those specific lanes. That's really what we want to do. And I always ask the question, because the book says what we read here, but when you're driving, you see solid and you think, well, can I cross this solid white line? And of course, a lot of answers is no, I can't. But read what this says. Crossing this wide solid white line is permitted, but discouraged. Again, you really want to make decisions before you get to the intersection. So one way to do that is to kind of plan ahead. But if you make a mistake and you're over in the right lane and say, oops, I need to really make a left turn and not a right turn, you can, of course, signal, search, and move to the left lane and cross that solid white line if you need to, okay? So broken white lines, unlike the yellow, they have traffic flowing in the same direction. So this would be in a one-way zone. Of course, crossing is permitted. You want to do it with caution. It's like making a lane change on a highway on a multi-lane road. So the difference between these lines here and these, I call them short and fast because they're really short lines with really fast and small spacing versus my longer white lines with bigger spacing. So these here indicate the flow is now being driven off of the road and maybe onto a turn or a exit lane of some kind. If you continued in that lane, it's going to force you in a different direction. So it's really important to focus on those. If you wanted to stay on what we call the main flow, you would have to be in the left lane, the first left lane, or all the way left, okay? But again, it's broken. You can cross. You want to do that with caution, of course. When used by a freeway exit ramp, it informs you that you're entering the freeway and must merge into traffic. When used within an intersection, it will help guide you through the intersection into a proper lane. So again, it just helps you get you flowing in the correct direction. So it is one way to do that. So here's some pavement markings, maybe on a multi-lane highway, double solid white. We're not allowed to cross these lanes. So these particular lanes that we're seeing here, they don't want you to cross for some reason. We don't know what the reason is really from the picture, but really just stay in your lane. Don't move unless you get the opportunity with the broken white lines that would allow you to do that, okay? So here's some more pavement markings. These are more critical because these are now for the pedestrians. So, but we have to recognize them, and they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So these would indicate what we call a pedestrian safety zones. So areas where pedestrians can cross safely, and we would need to yield to these pedestrians at these locations. Again, pedestrian markings again. So here's another style of marking. This particular one we call the stop line. So the stop line is an indication of where the vehicles are supposed to stop, waiting for the traffic light to change. The next picture shows you kind of a two series. So the two left turning lanes are kind of brought back just a few feet from the main stop for moving forward. So they call this kind of a staggered stop. So we're just a few feet back to allow traffic to not conflict with the vehicles waiting to turn. They wouldn't be up here. They'd be back a little bit further to allow their vehicles to turn safely to the left without conflicting with the other left turners here. So bike lanes, we might see these in places like Portland, Eugene, Salem, and many locations are now starting to incorporate them. They're kind of a safety zone, a bike lane. They're green, they're well marked. They have lots of spacing around the bike lane to keep the bicyclists safe. They have that symbol, of course. Bikes are generally allowed in these locations, and we see a lot of these over here on the right side. Again, a bike path. We really don't want to ride in the bike lanes as a car, as a driver. It's our job to stay to the left of that, keep them safe, we keep ourselves safe, and really allow them to travel, because they can really, if they needed to, use the roadway, including our lane too. Some more pavement markings. Again, remember the symbol. So this symbol here, we've talked about this already, the upside down triangle, which looks like a yield sign. And what we don't see in the picture is the yield sign. It's really what's not showing, okay? So it means yield. We're going to yield to traffic, pedestrians, cyclists that may already be in the space, in the turn in this roundabout here. Before we enter, we got to yield to those folks first, okay? Again, more painted marks, so kind of a merging of a couple of roads together. An area, we call this the gore zone, or area where vehicles are not supposed to travel across until they get just beyond that gore area. Again, these are kind of keeping us from contacting maybe fixed objects that might be on the roadway where vehicles aren't allowed to cross. So it's always good to maintain a space cushion. So we talk about space cushion in the DMV manual, and that really just simply means to just create a space around you, ahead of you, the sides, and especially to the rear. So following distance is really critical too. So we talk about how to judge, and we'll go into that a little bit in a bit. The speed at which you drive determines how much time you have to act or react, and how long it takes for you to stop. So of course, the faster you go, the more stopping distance you're going to need. We're going to cover that here too. The higher the speed you're traveling, the less time you have to spot hazards. So judge the speed of other traffic and react to conditions that may come to you. Always maintain a safe following distance from vehicles in the front of you. You'll have a better view of the roadway to watch for problems, and of course, more time to react to those issues. So again, another video that we'll probably have to just talk about, but basically safe following distance is defined as a 2 to 4 second. The book calls a 2 to 4 second following distance. And the way we do following distance is simply this. If I'm following a car in front of me, when that car passes a fixed object, I start counting. Not just 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It's really 1001, 1002, 1003. But now that object, as it gets closer to me, when it hits my car or stops near my car, now I stop counting, and that would be my following distance. So for speeds greater than 30, a safe following distance really should be 4 seconds or more to allow you time to make a decision and act, take some action related to those, okay? So too close, you really only have a split second to make decisions on what's happening in front. If you have more space, you can see better around the vehicle, and then you can know if something's actually happening to them, and your reactions might be just a simple move to the right lane or just slow down without us rear-ending the car in front of us. So create cushion, create space, especially at greater speeds. Again, the following distance, determine the following distance. They're following too closely, watch for an object. When that vehicle passes, count at least 2 seconds using the 1001, 1002 method. Once your vehicle passes, you stop your count. If you need to increase, just slow down a couple miles. It doesn't take more than a mile or two, and you'll just see the car quickly kind of move ahead of you, and now you've increased your following distance from what you counted before. You'd like to be more than 2 seconds behind a vehicle. We say 4 is really good, especially on highway speeds. So lane travel, this is like stopping in traffic. So when you're stopped behind a vehicle that's in front of you, we want to see certain things. We don't want to be right at their bumper. Just a little side story. I was with a friend of mine. He was helping me do some work on my vehicle, and I was driving with him. So I'm in his vehicle, and I am not kidding you. We were literally about an inch behind the front car. So that's not what you want. You don't want to see the back of the person's head. You want to actually see the tires touch the ground over your hood. That's the safest way. That gets you a good distance from the front vehicle. So that way, when that vehicle has a problem or they roll backwards, they have space, and then you have space. If they break down, you could go around them. So it's really important to create space in all sides, especially now waiting for traffic to move. So following distance, again, we talk about those seconds, and here's a whole series of different things. The best I can tell you is increase your following distance for various reasons. So weather, slippery roads, here we go, vehicles that want to pass you, when following motorcycles and bicyclists, any driver that you cannot see, you want to, again, increase the space between you and that vehicle in front of you. When you have a heavy load, especially heavy loads, we trailer a lot, so we pull a lot. I create a big space, a larger space than most. I have a lot of weight for carrying. So it's important to have a good space in front of you. When it's hard for you to see, so think about weather, darkness, evening time, it's not fun. Any place where you've kept poor visibility, decreased visibility, increase above the 4. Now we're talking much, much higher than the 4. 4 to 10 seconds now, following distances. When stopped on a hill, either downhill especially, you don't want to get rear-ended and shoved into another car. When you're learning to drive, well, that would be all of you. Eventually you'll be in a car soon. So create extra room. It gives you time to make critical decisions as you learn. When approaching or in a work zone, lots of work zones are starting to happen today. Folks are working. And even just the other day, we were driving with some students, and the workers are now in our lanes of travel. So again, you really want to be watchful for those individuals too. So side space cushion. So we talked about the front, and we'll talk about the rear in a moment. Side space cushion, again, really important to create side space cushion so you have room to create or react defensively if there's an issue in front of you. So a problem happens, and now you got to react. So where am I going? To the right, to the left? So if you're not aware, then really you only have choices to stop or slow down really fast. So if you have a choice, you maybe go to the left because that's an open space. Now you can do what they call an evasive maneuver. So be cautious when you're driving alongside other vehicles, multi-lane streets. Someone may crowd your lane. We call it kind of creating a closed area. It's hard to maneuver. So if possible, move ahead. Try to go ahead of the vehicles, keeping an open space. Maybe drop back, slow down a little bit. Keep as much space as possible between your vehicle and the oncoming vehicles. In general, it's safest to drive in the center of your lane so your vehicle can move and use those left and right side spaces to avoid potential problems. Make room for vehicles entering the freeway. There is no one next to you moving over the lane. Help other drivers signaling for a lane change make the move safely by slowing down, speeding up a little bit. Keep extra space between your vehicle and parked cars by moving away from them without leaving your lane. So vehicle door may open in your path. Again, when you're traveling kind of in a residential, think about that. You don't want to be really close to the cars. You want to create some space. So if they open their door, or they walk out or walk between cars, again, you'll have space created so that they can do what they need to do and you can operate safely. So behind you now, space cushion behind you, nice picture. We get this all the time. How do I fix the rear car who looks like they're really kind of right up against my bumper? So we can help this by creating a safe distance and steady speed. So if you're traveling slower, which as new drivers we tend to do, try to get to that regulatory speed, whatever it happens to be, okay? Try to signal. You want to make sure you're telling them what you're doing, right? It's always good communication. And try not to slow down and brake as often because it's challenging. When you're driving, we think we got to brake, accelerate. And that's not really what we want to do. Many times we're traveling for longer distances on nice straight roads. We just want the car to slow down. Just use the acceleration a little bit better versus braking and accelerating. If a vehicle behind you is following you too closely and there's a right lane, maybe move over, right? Think about moving because now that's a slow lane. Take that slow lane and allow them to come around you. By doing, you just slow down just a bit to help them pass safely. This may encourage the vehicle to pass. Hopefully they do. Maybe they'll stop tailgating you, but never really brake hard or what we call kind of slam the brakes to kind of shake them off of your tail. We don't want that. That could cause another whole problem called road rage. So backing up is another challenge. Backing your car maybe out of a driveway or just down the street a little bit. Backing in a straight line is a big thing we got to do too. A mistake that drivers make is when backing up is failing to look both ways. So I kind of do a 360, look over my left and over my right shoulder before I back. The mirrors are great, but they don't give us a good perspective. And today with new cars, they've got cameras now. Again, it's only a small perspective. We have 3 tools. If you have a camera, mirrors, and then your head. So the head is really the primary tool. The mirrors are a secondary tool, and really the camera is just a quick glance, okay? So check for pedestrians, maybe approaching traffic. Again, you want to glance and search. Back up slowly, you don't accelerate, you just release the pressure on your brake pedal. So stopping distances, again, they change based on your speed. So the faster you go, the more time it takes to stop. So you need to know, really, it's kind of important to know if I'm traveling at 20, maybe 50, or now 60, 70 miles an hour, it's going to take longer time to stop. So, and it will even increase even more carrying a heavy load or weight of any kind, okay? So I'm just checking my time here. So again, stopping distance increase, especially at higher speeds. You want to recognize maybe hazards, start applying your brakes sooner. Those kind of decision points happen much faster than waiting maybe in town where you're only traveling maybe 25, 30 miles an hour. You don't need as much stopping distance. You can start applying maybe a little bit later versus a little bit sooner at higher speeds. So always look ahead. We want you to scan, search. You're looking for information, problems, identify issues or problems that may come into your way. You don't want to wait till the last second to make a decision when some car is stopping and you haven't been paying attention because you may be distracted with something else in the car. So scanning simply means to take the entire scene, including sides of the roadway. So for me, I kind of scan up front. I'm going to check the mirrors, go back to the front, check my rear view mirror, back to the front, constantly checking, maybe check my speed, back to the front, always searching. You really want to search, as it says here, about every 8 to 10 seconds, you really want to search your mirrors. Check your blind spots, look over your shoulders, look ahead for any clues that maybe a driver ahead of you may be going too slow or stopping for some reason. It might be a bicyclist or a pedestrian that's in the roadway. It doesn't take but a split second, and now you're caught in a bad situation where you have no reaction time and you end up hitting somebody or hurting somebody, and that's not a good thing. So curves, these are, of course, there's lots of curves, roads, and we got to think about the signage. You'll see the signage we talked about before. Curves, not all roads are straight. They're not all flat, unfortunately. There are a lot of curves in our roads today. So we got to use the appropriate speed as we enter these curves. So those signs, when they're there, are really a guide, a warning to tell us we got to be careful. So look through the curve, try to search in the direction where the curve is to get as much information about approaching vehicles. Stay to the right of the center line. Don't try to cross. A lot of people tend to cross over like a race car, but you don't do that. Just stay to the right side. Stay always to the right side. In the middle of your lane, be alert for bicyclists, pedestrians, of course, lots of slow traffic, moving vehicles, lots of things. Really think about it, especially if you're on a country road that tend to be curvy. What else could be out there? Animals, right? People that are driving slow, farm equipment. We've been in places where we've been to, we had Amish in Pennsylvania and Ohio. So folks like that maybe don't have the vehicles, but they have horse-drawn buggies. And so those vehicles would be also slow and could be hidden around the curve or turn. So when you come out, of course, out of a curve or turn, now you can start increasing your speed gradually. So changing lanes, another challenging spot, of course. We need to make what they call a lateral move to the left or to the right. It's important to get a perspective of where vehicles are. So one of the biggest and most critical check that you'll do is called the blind spot check. So really, I call it a chin to shoulder and eyes looking over the shoulder. So chin to shoulder, eyes looking over the shoulder. That's kind of what I've been calling it this year is a go or no go decision. So maybe I'm making a right turn or I'm moving from the center to the right lane. Signal on, check the mirrors. So far good, but now I look at my blind spot and that's the decision. Do I go? Is it clear? If it's not, then I don't go. I don't make that decision because there may be something in the lane I don't see in my mirrors, but I do see in my blind spot check, okay? So always check your side and rear view mirrors every time. It's kind of an observation check. It's really critical, important to do that. Use your turn signal. Definitely communicate. As I tell my students in the car, do you have their text numbers? Can you text them what you're doing as you're driving, or are you going to communicate with the tools of the car, which of course is the right way to do it. Use the turn signal, signal your intentions, and then do what you plan to do. Don't just change it up, okay? Check for other drivers who also may be moving into the same lane. You know, you may not be the only one making the lane change. Just before you begin, of course, moving into another lane, quickly glance over your shoulder to check the rear in the direction you want to move. Check for any vehicles that may be in your blind spot. So as you can see in the picture here, the mirrors get good information, but the blind spot really is kind of the last check because it's real easy to sideswipe a car who may be in those lanes. So lots of no passing zones and signs, of course, and pavement markings will tell us that really, if you think about it, the lines and the signs all are communicating to us as drivers what we should or should not be doing as we travel. So some locations, signs and pavement markings are there to tell us really, can we pass safely, legally, or can we not pass like we see here in the sign? So don't cross the center line to pass when you are in a no passing zone. So that might be a solid yellow, right? Those locations where we're not allowed to pass. There's a no passing zone. Again, you're going to get both the signage maybe and the line markings. So do not attempt to pass a vehicle if you cannot safely return to your lane before entering a no passing zone. So if you don't have a time, think about it. I'm gonna make a quick pass around a slow truck or vehicle. If I don't have enough time, don't do it. You don't want to do it because now you could be in a head-on, and that's a really dangerous situation. So here's passing. Again, the video, I'm not going to be able to do that, but I'll talk it through as best I can. So again, passing another vehicle is a normal part of driving. I recommend when you start to do passing, be on a multi-lane road. So at least 4 lanes, 2 the other side, 2 for us, and start in the right lane. And then pass a slow-moving car and then come back in the same lane. So really, you're traveling in 2 lanes, using 2 lanes that go in the same direction. But learning to pass and the opportunity to pass, to practice passing, true passing, may not actually happen until you get much more experience, okay? So again, give yourself a good view of the roadway. You really need to search as far as your eyes can take you because you're trying to figure out if you have enough space to make the pass safely. Because if you don't have enough space, don't do the pass. Large trucks and trailers know the speed. They can be really challenging passing those kind of vehicles. We got to know your car's ability. So now maybe your older car may not have the acceleration you'd like to have. Again, decision is quick. Nope, I'm not going to do the pass. So be sure you have enough room to complete the maneuver. So sometimes it takes longer than what you think. In our program, we say just to simply pass a slow 50-mile-an-hour truck, you're doing 60, not exceeding the speed limit because you're not allowed to do that, takes almost a mile. So think about that, a whole mile to pass a truck just by going 10 miles faster than it. When in doubt, simply stay in your lane. When passing another vehicle on a 2-lane road, you should pass only to the left of the vehicle. Your pass may not begin before the start of the passing zone. You must be completed before you enter the no passing zone. Again, you want to do it all in that legal location, legal space. If not, you run the risk of potentially getting into a head-on. Again, check for a clear path before you start. Check your mirrors. I always like to keep my left turn signal on when I'm in that lane, the opposite direction, so that way folks can see my signal flashing. And then I turn it off when I go back to the right, okay, when I get back into the lane of travel I'm supposed to be in. So turn your signal on, increase your speed, complete your pass as soon as possible. When you can see the vehicles passed in the rear view mirror, so not the side, but the rear, both headlights, we'd like to see both headlights and grille. That means you're far enough ahead of the vehicle to get back into the right lane. So again, more no passing zones, and this is kind of identifying some things we've already seen with the lines and signs. So again, solid on my side, solid on both sides. This would be a no passing zone without really a sign. Here's solid only on my side as we're traveling. Again, solid for hills, because really, think about it, you're climbing a hill. Can you see really far past the hill? No. So generally speaking, climbing a hill is really a no passing zone. Again, oncoming, unable to see around a curve or a turn, might be blocked by some reason. Again, not a good place to pass safely. So here's another round for intersections. When you get to an intersection, you do not want to pass in an intersection. That's not a good place. Railroad crossings, another location. Again, you do not want to pass in or around near a railroad crossing. So here's another situation that could happen. We've got a couple spots. I think I like to teach the one that's in North Bend. The vehicle, of course, may be stopped in your lane ahead of you, and you're going, well, why is he stopped? And so you think, well, maybe I could just go around him. It looks like I could pass. I mean, it does have a lane here, sort of. But now what happens is there's a pedestrian crossing, and you move from the right to the left lane and continue, and now you've just hit a pedestrian crossing in a pedestrian safety zone. So be careful. Search. Make sure it's safe. Maybe follow the directions of the vehicle in front because there may be a reason why they're doing it. So passing on the right, of course, we may pass on the right only under these certain conditions. So normally we pass on the left when we can safely, but there are conditions when we have to pass on the right side. So the vehicle we're about to pass is has signaled a left turn. So they're kind of squeaking over, moving over to the left side of the lane, and there's only so much space, we may go around them temporarily and use that right space, okay? But you have to have sufficient space in that right to pass safely, leaving the paved portion of the road or on the driving or in a bike lane, again, not allowed, okay? You gotta be clear, you can't conflict with that bike lane. You can't exit the road itself to try to do that. You're traveling on a road with 2 or more lanes traveling in the same direction, and the vehicle you're passing is in the left lane. Happens all the time. Use extra caution or care when passing on the right. Other drivers do not expect to be passed. Again, you might get some looks at you as this happens. So again, do it with caution. So we're being passed now. So as new drivers, beginning drivers, we tend to drive a little bit slower. So lots of vehicles want to go around us. So to help those vehicles pass safely, there's some things we can do, right? Stay in your right lane, stay to the right. You can help other drivers pass safely by checking oncoming traffic, maybe adjusting your speed a little bit to let that vehicle move around quickly as possible, whichever direction it is. Do not use your hands or lights. Don't tell people, hey, it's okay, go, 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 come. Don't do that. You just drive, you control your car. Don't signal other drivers, again, when to pass. They'll figure it out. They're driving, you're driving, you take care of your vehicle. The law prohibits flashing of your lights at drivers to let them know when to pass. Again, you control your car, they will control their car. So freeway driving, here's a freeway driving kind of scenario. Again, videos are great. I have a whole series of videos here that we created about 3 years ago for our travels. So kind of nice to look at. So freeways, of course, they have several lanes in each direction. Speeds are much higher than other roadways. Traffic on the freeways usually moves more efficiently because access is controlled. There are fewer sharp curves usually, no railroad crossings. You don't really have any bike paths here. Again, no non-motorized activity. So really no hikers, no bikers, no scooters and those kinds of things. Really, it's really only faster travel vehicles like motorcycles all the way up to trucks and big rigs. So drive at a steady speed. We want to travel, you're moving quicker, right? Weaving in and out through traffic, again, is not a good thing. The risk of a crash does happen. It's a big issue. You got to think about it. Seldomly saves time. We don't really save a bunch. Try to keep the pace with the traffic on the road, but do not be lured into exceeding the posted speed. Stay within the flow of the traffic. If you drive at the speed or below the flow of traffic, you must stay in that right lane. So watch for traffic trying to enter the freeway and adjust your speed to permit a safe, smooth merge. So again, nice video. This one I don't have online, so I can make it available if you're interested. I can throw it on a thumb drive. I can take all my presentations. If you're interested, just email me. I'll create it. It's about 8 gigs. I can throw it onto a thumb drive for you and just mail it to you, okay? All right. So here's more, entering a freeway. So again, a video I would have available for you. But when you're entering a freeway, it's kind of a merging process. You're going to enter, kind of increasing your speed. And then when you get up to speed, what they call the ramp speed of the traffic flow, you're really signaling at this point to get over in and merge with the flow, the main flow of the traffic. So you really don't want to slow down. This is not a place to stop for sure. You want to enter at a busy road usually, but when you're entering a freeway, you got to do the opposite. You got to speed up. You got to get up to speed. So the ramp speed is exactly that, to climb and increase the move with the flow that's already there. You're kind of like moving and making a lane change into that flow of traffic at the same pace that they're at. You got to yield to the traffic that's already on the freeway. Use the mirrors and check your blind spots for merging. Adjust your speed to match the traffic already that's there. Keep moving if at all possible. Drivers behind you expect you to speed up rather than slow down. So back to freeway driving. So you'll see right away we've got some signs here that are really important to recognize. So if you start to enter a freeway in the wrong direction. And so right away we see these do not enter and wrong way, and they tend to be very large signs because, again, they're trying to grab our attention. If we make this simple mistake, it does happen. People do this. You want to fix it. Immediately pull off, get off the ramp as quick as possible, turn on your hazards, warn others, and then really just cautiously make a U-turn where you can safely, okay? What I'm going to tell you is in other states, in Arizona, where we live for about 4 or 5 months, they have about 1,600 wrong way driving crashes on their highways every year. So it's really critical. People will go past these do not enters and simply go the wrong direction on the highway now at much faster speeds, which would be more tragic to many, many people. So real important. If you make a mistake, we're drivers, we all make mistakes. That's how it works. Just fix it as quickly as possible, okay? That's what I'm trying to tell you. So ramp meters, I have a little, I don't know how that's gonna show, but there's a ramp meter picture here. If I can get there, pause it. It's not doing it, thank you. Okay, yeah, these are the video ones that are popping up now. So ramp meters are placed in some of the freeway entrance ramps. And so usually, like again, generally bigger cities where I remember seeing lots of those, many of those areas where we could get on and they're meter controlled. Basically, it looks like a traffic light. It's got a red, it looks like it may have a space for a yellow, but it's not really used, and then a green, or sometimes just red and green. And you want to, they operate really at only certain times during the day. So usually a work week kind of a situation, Monday through Friday, maybe in the morning, maybe in the evening, or both time frames. You go from entering the ramp and then it goes into 2 separate lanes. And so you pick a side, left or right, doesn't matter. And what happens is one car is going to go, they get the green light, the other one's on a red light, and vice versa. So it kind of alternates the flow of traffic, kind of controlling how many cars can enter the on-ramp and get onto the freeway. You don't really want to stop, of course, when it's not working. So if it's off or not lit, then it's basically allowing you to travel without without any controls there. So again, just kind of watch those as you enter those. It's a controlling system that they have that they put to control the traffic flow for major flows in and out of cities. So leaving a highway, again, another good video that I've got here. We got to think about signaling and lots of information. So traveling on a highway, information tends to come really, really quickly. And so right away, we've got exit speeds and ramp numbers and all these different things we need to know as we try to exit off of a roadway here. So maintain, of course, the speed. Once you figure out where you're getting off at, you want to signal and move in that direction to the right. Some of the exit numbers now relate to a mile marker. So maybe you're at mile marker 75 on certain highway, maybe Highway 26. That would be an exit 75 potentially that would be in your space, okay? So of course, never stop or back up on these locations. If you miss an exit, you want to be able to get off at the next available one, turn around and come up the correct direction and then go around again. You're kind of making like a big loop to get off at the correct exit, or just find a different way to get to where you're going once you exit off the highway. So the shoulder, of course, they tend to be larger spaces allowable for us to park or if we break down if we need to. They're really designed for emergency use only. So it's really not a place for us to park and stay for any length of time, mostly for breakdowns or for problems that we may have in our particular vehicle. So again, these videos I can make available to anyone that's here. I'll email me your address and your request, and I will go ahead and mail you out a thumb drive of the presentation, the entire presentation, okay? No cost. So freeway driving, of course, troubles always tend to happen. Again, vehicle troubles, they just tend to pop up sometimes. So if you have any problems and you've got some problems with your car, it's not working, you want to exit. You want to get off to these off spaces, the right side of the road, these shoulders of the roadway. Turn your hazards on. You want to warn people. Again, they say it's always better to stay in your vehicle, even seat belted, because if you did get hit by a car that may not be paying attention, you're in the car, you're belted, you're much more safer than if you were just kind of walking around your vehicle, just waiting. So walking, of course, along the freeway is dangerous. We do see people who break down sometimes or run out of gas or have problems, and they're just walking to the next exit. Again, you really want to be careful as you do that. I would stay over the guardrail if at all possible. Definitely kind of keep your eyes to the rear when you're doing that if you have to do those kinds of things, okay? So large vehicles, and this is kind of where we fall into the towing, bigger rigs, and of course, you know, nice big trucks here. So driving a large vehicle or towing of any kind, it's more challenging. You've got a bigger, longer vehicle. They tend to be higher, maybe wider than most passenger cars. They'll fit in the standard lanes, but they're just much bigger. They take longer sometimes to accelerate or to stop and require more room to turn. So think about a big truck. They can't really make a nice big U-turn. They sometimes take spaces that we would need to make a turn. So when you drive a pickup with a camper or a motorhome or tow a trailer, you should often check your speed and the traffic behind you. If traffic is stacking up behind you, pull off at the first safe turnout. Let the traffic pass. Use the right lane on roads with 2 or more lanes going in the same direction. Oregon law allows you to tow a maximum of 1 boat, generally a utility trailer or another vehicle behind the recreational vehicle. You cannot tow a second trailer or vehicle. So they call them triples. Basically, you have a trailer and then you would have a car or another towable behind that. That's not allowed in Oregon. And that would be chapter 2. Yeah, appreciate it. Chapter 3, turns and intersections. So turn signals is one of our main tools that we'll use to communicate. So something to think about, turn signals, they're always on the left side of the steering wheel, okay? It doesn't matter if you own a sport car, race car, or a little jalopy or Toyota, something like that, it's always on the left. So turn signals are used to communicate with other drivers where you intend to go. You must signal before you turn, change lanes, or pull away from a curb. Before making such a move, be sure you can do so safely. Always check traffic ahead, behind you, or to the side. If your vehicle is moving in traffic, use your turn signal at least 100 feet before the turn or lane change. When you are parked at a curb or about to re-enter traffic, use the signal long enough to alert traffic that you're moving into that lane. My simple is start with a turn signal first. So signal first, that way it's been on for as long as you need to, and then do whatever you're gonna do. Blind spot check, search, right? Re-enter traffic flows. So we can also use our hand signals. So hand signals, kind of like when we've been kids, right? We like to pedal and bike. I like to occasionally bike myself too. So hand signals are also allowed in a car when your signals may not be working. It's acceptable use, except at nighttime, right? So only use your hand or arm signals in daylight and when you can clearly be seen. See people in vehicles of a distance of 1,000 feet. You must use your turn signal lights at night or when visibility is poor. Hand or arm signals really don't work anymore. Do not rely solely on the signal of another driver. So if you see a person and they intend to say they're taking a left or a right turn, don't rely on that. You really need to know what their full intentions are. And so we like to say, watch what they do. And once they do what they do, now you can go, okay? Just make sure it's safe. Make sure they operate the direction that they think, and just watch their intentions versus what their signal says. So turns for rules for turning. Here we go. Some stuff here we got to kind of think about as you're driving. So we want to, of course, use the turn signal, such locations like a driveway and alleyways, not just at intersections only. I say turn signals really should be used, turns should be used at all those locations. Check for traffic behind and beside you as well. Turn smoothly and at lower speeds usually. The diagram here kind of shows the flow of the traffic. So if you're at an intersection, these are all two ways. So blue car, you'll see the path. You really don't want to jump across after you turn. You can make those lateral moves, but as you turn, you want to enter the space that you're allowed to enter first. So again, you'll see those flows here. So turns and intersections, you may turn across a bike lane, but do not move into a bicycle lane in preparation for a turn. So locations where there is the solid lines, generally this is not a location for you to enter the turning lane. That is actually just up ahead here. Kind of can't see it behind the cyclist, but we definitely see it here. So if I was a car and needed to make a right turn, I would yield to the cyclist first, let them get ahead of me, signal search, check my blind spot, and then move to the right behind the cyclist to make this right turn. Always yield to the cyclist and bicyclist, especially on the bike lane or on a sidewalk. Check the crosswalk and stop for pedestrians. So we really want to allow the pedestrians, allow the cyclists to do what they need to do safely, and then we would just simply yield and wait for them to complete their action, then we can do ours. So lane use control signs or pavement markings may be used to direct you to a correct path or direction. So where we see this one-way sign and it's obvious, it's more of a regulatory sign, notice black and white. So we need to go the right flow, because if we go the wrong direction, that's a bad thing. So if you're at an intersection and in the wrong lane to turn, go to the next intersection. So it's kind of like going through a one-way zone where traffic flows one way and you can't go that way, so you go to the next intersection usually and find the turn you're looking for, look for the arrows, look for other clues that say, yes, this is an allowable turn, use that direction or flow. It is safer to drive around the block than it is to risk a crash due to a last-minute lane change or direction change. So right turns and intersections, get as near as you can to the right curb or the edge of the roadway. Just before entering the intersection, look to your left, to the front and the right, and then one more time to the left, because usually at this point traffic would be coming from the left that would hit you first. So at least one more time left before you go. On two-way road flows, approach the turn with your vehicle in the lane just to the right of the center line. Just before entering an intersection, look to the left, look to the front. Again, one more time to the right and left again. For oncoming traffic and or cross traffic, yield the right of way to oncoming traffic until it's safe to turn. Turn just before the imaginary center point of an intersection. Drive just to the right of the center line of the street you are entering. It is illegal to execute a left turn onto a two-way road against a red light. So if it's two-way flows, so you're entering a two-way and you're on a two-way, you can't make a left turn on a red. So we simply have, I have a little rhyme that says two-way to two-way, left turn is a no way. You can't make that left turn. Only onto a one-way would be allowed, and it has to be in the direction you want to go. So if a left turn lane is provided, you must turn from that lane. So here's kind of those left turn opportunities. So here's a one-way zone, and you'll see this car is also on a one-way. So from a one-way to a one-way is also what we call okay. You can do that kind of a turn. So of course, left turn, one-way road, approach the turn in the traffic in the lane that's nearest to the curb. You don't want to jump across. You start here and then you can do multi-lane changes if you want to, but you had to start here first. You may make this turn against the red light after you stop, of course, yield to traffic, maybe pedestrians that may be crossing. So it's really good to clear all of that and check the light before you go. So it's really good to do that, because once the light goes, it may be more risky. So left or right turns, two-way roads to one-way roads, approach the turn in the traffic lane that's nearest to the direction. Again, you want to follow the closest, don't jump across. You may make this turn against the red light after stopping and yielding to traffic and pedestrians. Left turns on one-way streets. So left turn one-way to road to two-way road. You can see in the picture there, that's not going to happen. So from one-way to two-way, again, no way, can't do those against the red light. But you do, once the light turns green, then you want to get to the furthest lane. We say kind of go past the center line, and you'll pick up the middle or closest to center line lane to turn into. So dual left and right turn. So again, what you have here is really two lanes that go in one direction. You want to stay in your lane. And sometimes what they do is they have little dashed line that would separate the two lanes. So what I tell folks is look for the center line. You're going to go from center to center, but this car is going to go from their lane to the curb or the sidewalk. And that way they don't conflict with each other as they make this particular type of turn. So U-turns, of course, lots of U-turn opportunities. Oh boy, I messed that up. Oh, there it goes. There it is. So U-turns are prohibited in these locations. So some locations you can make a U-turn. Intersections controlled by a traffic signal unless a sign permits the turn. Between intersections in a city, any location within a city limits that your vehicle cannot be seen by traffic coming from either direction within 500 feet in city, 500 feet, or any location outside of city limits where your vehicle cannot be seen by traffic coming from either direction within 1,000 feet.
Hey,
Well,
Mike,
really,
can you make it full screen?
oh, sorry.
Thanks. No worries.
Yep. I thought I did that. Okay, there we go. So of course, these are the prohibited U-turn opportunities. So really, we're looking for a sign that says no U-turn allowed. And those you might see in a major intersection. But when you're trying to think about doing a U-turn in a residential, are you within city? So can you be seen? Can you not be seen by vehicles of either direction within 500 feet or outside the city limits by the same thing, 1,000 feet? Or at any location where U-turns are prohibited by official signs or markings. So here's kind of my picture I grabbed of when you think about it. We've been talking about regulatory and signs and speeds and lines and all of this fun stuff. So let's say we didn't have all of those. This could be what you have if you didn't have controls. So the chaos created by the lack of signs and the lack of rules, this is what it could look like. So stop signs and yield signs and traffic signals control the flow of traffic at busy intersections. A defensive driver never assumes a stop sign or a traffic signal will stop approaching traffic. We just really got to be alert at all times. And so here could be chaos that could be upon us as we travel in these crazy locations we go. Okay. So intersections and stops. So at an intersection with a stop sign or a steady red signal or flashing red signal, we must stop before the marked stop line or crosswalk if there is one. So there's your stop line in this particular case. If there isn't a stop line, you can use the first line in the crosswalk as a location to stop at too. That's a nice way to do it. If there's no stop line or crosswalk, we call it an unmarked crossing area. So stop there before the sidewalk or the unmarked crossing area. Always yield to pedestrians, bicyclists, and any traffic in the intersection when making an allowed turn. After stopping, if you're unable to see traffic coming from your left and your right, slightly pull forward and scan the area. So we call it kind of a safety stop. You're going to move further into the intersection, maybe even crossing the pedestrian safety zone to bring your car now kind of to the edge of the roadway to search to see if it's still clear to proceed. After stopping, if you're unable to see, we did that. Even if you have a green light, do not enter an intersection unless there's room for your vehicle on the other side. So it could be a series of stopped cars. You don't want to stop behind the stopped car that now places your car in the middle of the intersection. So if there's not enough room, stay before your line and then proceed across when the other traffic is moving. So intersections and four-way stops, again, these are kind of a new kind of critical decision points here when we talk about stopping, because unlike a regular stop with maybe one or two stop signs, here we got everybody stopping at one time. So the rules are much, much different than at these locations here. So here with 4 stop signs, an intersection with these stop signs in all 4 directions, it's commonly courtesy to allow the driver who stops first to go first. So I like to do a count. So when I'm approaching, maybe in car A, I'm approaching the intersection and I see that car B got there first and car C got there after or before me. So I would be third. So yellow car B1, blue car C2, I'm 3. So once each car does whatever they're doing, I would follow after them. And if any car came after me, they would be after me. But now let's say car A and car B approach the same intersection at the same time. It's always just good to give to that car that's on the right. So I don't sit there with a radar gun or speed monitoring system. I just would give it to the car to the right, even if it was close. I'm not going to play the game, just give it to them. It's good to yield. It's much safer to yield than to kind of get into a little argument there at a four-way. Intersections with no signs, we call them kind of an uncontrolled intersection. Gets a little, again, another intersection without controls. So now we got to fall back to yielding. So this is a yielding situation. As you approach an intersection with no signs or signals, look to the left, make sure cross traffic is yielding right of way, then look to the front and the right. Be prepared to stop. Just yield. It's all about yielding. So I'd say if a car enters an uncontrolled intersection ahead of you, just let them go first. Again, search and maybe even just let them go until it's safe for you to proceed, whatever direction you're going. As you enter the intersection, check again for unusual or unexpected actions of other drivers. So T intersections, think about it. Car B is kind of their road is ending, but the road ahead of us that's kind of crossways left and right, they would technically have the right of way. So if you're approaching an end of your road, like a T intersection, yield to any cross traffic pedestrians or cyclists that may be in your path before you turn. Another intersection that we talk about, and only have really a couple small roundabouts, if you want to call them that, in the North Bend area, we like to take our students through. So roundabouts, it kind of replaces a four-way. Think about it. So now instead of a decision point of who gets there first, it's more about who's in the roundabout first. They only go in a certain direction. It's really important to do that. Again, another good video that I can link to folks if they'd like. But basically, it just talks about the flow, talks about the different components of a roundabout, what to do, especially in an emergency with emergency vehicles potentially coming through. So as you enter a roundabout, right away we see yield signs. You'll see these two yield signs. And so the traffic that's already in the roundabout has the right of way, along with pedestrians or cyclists that may already be there. And once we enter, we just follow a circle and go to either the first point to the right or straight across, or now to the left and exit there, or in some cases, we just completely go around because we need to go the other direction. So roundabouts do get a little easier to operate depending on the complexity of these. The next roundabout is more complex as we have a multi-lane road now. So we've got 2 lanes of travel versus a single lane around the center. Again, it allows traffic to move much quicker, but again, more things are happening. You've got crosswalks and you've got areas around the center that are used. If an emergency vehicle was to come behind you, you don't stop in the roundabout. You want to exit as soon as you can, get out of their way and allow them to transition through, because we really don't want to stop them and have them be stuck in the middle of a roundabout. So it's important for us just to find a quick exit, get out of the way, and allow that emergency vehicle to come around us, okay? I think that is it, yes. So Paul, you got that one? There's chapter 3.
Still see the 3 dots. Give it a sec.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
so,
I think we're good now, Mike. It's all yours.
great. So chapter 4, sharing the road. We got to share the road with all kinds of users. We call them highway transportation users. So this is another level of users. So drivers of passenger vehicles, we're going to share the road with many users, other users. In addition to knowing and following the rules of the road, it's our responsibility to adjust your driving to avoid conflicts with other users. So first, of course, is pedestrians. Lots of pedestrians. They're everywhere. So pedestrians, of course, are very vulnerable. that are users of the same road that we get. They cross our path, they walk in front, sometimes they cut in front. We must stop for pedestrians crossing the road at any marked or unmarked crosswalk. Pedestrian is crossing the road when any part, extension, and this is what you want to think about. It's not just the body, the person, their leg. It may be a cane, it could be a wheelchair or a bicycle that starts to enter the roadway at a crosswalk for a pedestrian. This is when we need to stop for them, okay? So stop and remain stopped for a pedestrian crossing in a crosswalk when the pedestrian is in your lane of travel. So even if you're just simply turning and you want to check for pedestrians that may be coming either from the other side to your turning lane, or you're going across and they're now coming from either the left or the right side and they enter your space, you want to stop in a lane next to you. So now it's more of like one lane over. So now again, if this person is coming either direction, not just in front of you, but maybe to the left of you, the next lane next to you, again, you're stopping, including a bike lane, in the lane you're about to turn into. So all of those are opportunities for us to wait and yield for pedestrians. And if you're turning at an intersection that has a traffic signal, before you begin to turn, the pedestrian must be 6 feet or more from the lane you are turning into. If you are turning at an intersection that doesn't have a traffic signal, before you begin to turn, the pedestrian must be past the lane you are turning onto, plus the next lane. So it's one lane beyond us. So here's that kind of same scenario we talked about before, where we have a stopped car, but you can kind of see there's a little one crossing the street. So don't pass a vehicle that may be stopped at a crosswalk. The driver may be waiting for a pedestrian to cross the road. So be prepared. Don't move. Make sure it's safe to proceed. If you are not required to stop if a pedestrian is in a crosswalk or in the other side of a safety island. So here's a safety island you can kind of see, where this allows the pedestrian to really stop and wait, make a next decision to cross. So traffic behind could move because he's now in that safety zone. That's what we're calling it, safety island, safety zone, okay? So of course, pedestrians and large crosswalks and really every intersection, we have them all over the place. It's they may be marked and they may have lines, and we'll kind of show you some of those lines. They kind of vary in different locations. And again, they may not have lines. So we talk about marked and unmarked, and it's good to recognize those locations. You can just simply take a walk around your block maybe and see where there are painted markings on the roadway and what they look like. And then maybe another intersection might not have those markings, but yet you have a sidewalk. And so those sidewalks now become an unmarked zone in the intersection that you're about to cross. So we want to be able to look for those locations and identify them and then stop where you need to stop. So you got to be at least 6 feet wide and exist even if there's no sidewalk or shoulder. And here's kind of what they look like. So here's a solid lines. Here's what we normally see, kind of the standard kind of like railroad tie kind of version, a railroad track kind of version. And then continental, I see a lot of continentals now. And then dashed and zebra and ladder. Again, these are all kinds of marked crosswalks. So one thing about these marked crosswalks, the continental, what we realized is as travelers, our tires eventually wear these out. So these are actually spaced just enough to allow our car tires to cross over them without having to replace those over and over year after year. So here would be an unmarked crosswalk. You can see here's the sidewalk, and across the way we got a sidewalk. So you'll notice there's a break here, and this would be a clue to an intersection for a driver, but it also is an indicator of where we would need to stop. So we would stop generally right up at the end of that line if necessary for a pedestrian that has entered that crosswalk. In this case, an unmarked crosswalk. So some mid-block crosswalks, and you can see this one here kind of jots out from the street. It creates a safe area for a pedestrian. So when I'm coming or you're driving and you see a person walking in the direction of the crosswalk, and has really entered this space, I start slowing down and stopping for that individual. That's what I do. If they're over here and kind of milling about, I don't worry about it. They're not really intending to cross the street. I'm looking for their intention, their actual intention to move into the crosswalk. So that's when I would decide to stop for them. So of course, don't stop in any portion of your vehicle that may be overhanging. So here's a nice, looks like a Mustang that's kind of blocking the crosswalk. He's taking up some of the space where the pedestrians are supposed to be walking across safely. So don't block those locations. Wait for pedestrians to clear. Blocking a crosswalk forces pedestrians now to go around your vehicle, puts them in a little dangerous situation potentially. If you cross a sidewalk, such as when entering or leaving a parking lot, alleyway, driveway, again, stop before reaching the sidewalk. Yield to those pedestrians first, and then you can cross into that space if there's none of those individuals there, okay? Before you enter a road, definitely search for pedestrians. So here's another version of yielding that we get to all the time. In town, I've only seen a few people with either guide dogs or the white and red canes. So white canes and guide dogs are another type of pedestrian we've got to deal with. So you must give the right of way to a blind or partially blind pedestrian who is carrying a white cane or using a guide dog. So just imagine if an individual steps in front of your car just as the light turns green. You got to wait, right? Even if your light is green, you really now have a more responsibility to allow this individual to safely cross, even though you have the right of way at this point. It's safer for them to get across than you go after they are safely across the street, okay? So remain stopped until that person has crossed the entire roadway, even if you have a green light. Of course, kids are about, you know, we're going to be hitting summer here coming quickly. So be extra careful, of course, in residential areas and many places and parks where children are likely to be out. Do not drive too close to parked cars that may be blocking your view. Be watchful when backing in or out of driveways. Children are unpredictable. They may run out. They may be playing behind your vehicle. So it's really important as a driver to really kind of search, make sure you're not hitting some of these little kids that may not be seen. As I tell you folks, they don't really know the laws and the rules. They just like to have fun, just like you would. So we don't want to be a part of their destruction and injury. So let's just make sure they're safe. So school zone, of course, the school zone section of the road maybe adjacent to a school or a school crosswalk. The sign shape is kind of the first clue. So we always say, look at the top portion. It kind of looks like a house. So I call it schoolhouse. So this is a school crossing, 5-sided sign, marks the school zones, warns you about potential crossings. There's signs may display horizontal lines, which really indicate where the crosswalk is versus one that might say, instead of school, it would say ahead, but minus those two lines below the walkers there. So two signs may be adjacent together to show the actual location. These signs will be yellow in color. Again, look for children and be ready to stop. So in the school zones, we got some speed related concerns we got to worry about. So it's real important when I do the driving portion of our program. It's nice to read. I say, well, how fast should you travel? And we see the speed of 20, but then really what you need to do is read this. So it varies. There's only 3 kinds. We'll cover those in just a moment here. So a school speed zone is an area where reduced speed, normally about 20, applies and is defined by the school speed signs. The school speed zone begins at the school speed limit sign and normally ends, in this case, we see a sign here that says end school zone sign, okay? So it starts and ends there, and then it may vary depending with the signage we'll see in just a moment here, okay? So lots of signs like this that we'll see, and this really is, think about this, it says 20, but when do you travel 20? If the regulatory speed might be 25 in a residential, you drop to 20, but really you only go to 20 when children are present. And so now the question becomes, when are children present? Really, any day, at any time, children may be present. So it isn't related to the time of the year, school time, not school time. It could be summertime. It could be evening time. Again, when children are present, we drop our speed to 20. Of course, children may be waiting at a crosswalk. They may be occupying or walking within a crosswalk. Again, be alert all times for children in those school zone areas. The next sign we see covers a school days and time frame. So this is really critical because now it only works within those locations. So trying to get this moved out of the way, sorry. So again, school limit, same, still 20, but now it's between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. Only during that time frame will we be at those speeds. Again, it's only usually within a few blocks of the school zone, but it's again within those limits we have to operate our speed. The next one we see normally is out in a major flow. We call them arterials, and they tend to have a flashing light. So now it's only 20 when the light is flashing, which again would probably only be during a short period of time when kids are arriving to school or going home from school. So looking for those, this is all we have within the state of Oregon for school speed limit signs. And of course, bicyclists now, this is another user or type of highway transportation user we get to see. These are, of course, these cyclists are more difficult to see than other vehicles. They can be hidden a lot of times in our blind spot, easily overlooked. Bicyclists often react differently to road hazards than drivers of motor vehicles. These hazards could include potholes and lots of trash and litter, storm grades, railroad tracks. They cause the vehicle, the bicyclist, to go in different directions. So again, you really have to be alert, especially driving in and around bicyclists. Any of these items could cause a bicyclist to move into our path or slow down. Give the bicyclist plenty of room to move around these types of hazards. So when you're approaching a bicyclist, be alert, of course, be prepared to slow down if necessary. You may need to be able to predict the bicyclist's intentions. As a driver, you need to know the following rules to properly share the road with them. So don't drive in the bike lane. Nice picture, right? That's not a great place to drive or park, doesn't matter. That's their space. It's kind of theirs. When in certain locations, when they have a bike lane, it's really important to let them stay in the bike lane and not cross into it, not use it, not park there, okay? When entering or leaving an alleyway, driveway, again, a private road, you gotta be careful for bicyclists, just like pedestrians. Watch for those. Do not move into or travel in a bike lane in preparation for a turn. This is not a place to make a right turn. That's done here and here only in this particular location. Got to yield for these bicyclists in the bike lane. So green bike boxes is kind of something that's relatively been new in the last 4 or 5 years. Many bigger cities are starting to incorporate them now. We might see some of those in the future years too. So as more bicyclists hit the road, it's a great method of transportation. It's a lot cheaper, less maintenance. I mean, there's a lot of positives here, guys, but they also get to use the space. So we've now created space for them to be safe. So our job really is to give them that space. So here we go. You must yield to bicyclists in the bike lane or on the sidewalk before you turn across lane or sidewalk. You must yield again to bicyclists at intersections the same as you would for other types of vehicles. So they tend to travel really quick, don't they, as you go. Sometimes they're in speeds of higher than 35, 40 miles an hour. We're only allowed to pass a bicyclist traveling in your lane if you leave enough distance to prevent contact with the bicyclist if they were ever to fall. So I always say that it's not just my car or my vehicle, it's my mirrors too. It's any extension of my vehicle that might be out there. And so if I'm going to pass a cyclist, especially a bicyclist, I want to definitely have enough space where my mirrors, even on my bigger rig, doesn't extend and contact that bicyclist on the left or right of me, okay? the same rules for passing other vehicles apply to bicyclists. If you cannot pass safely, you must slow down and remain behind the bicyclist until it's safe to pass. So motorized wheelchairs, these are folks that can use the space that's used for the cyclist, okay? They may be in the same lanes. Operators of motorized wheelchair scooters and personal assistive mobility devices are permitted to use bike lanes and paths. You must yield to these operators as you would a bicyclist. So here's the bike boxes. We kind of talked a little bit about them, but here's more of a nicer picture. These are kind of green, and they create a kind of a safety zone or area for bicyclists to be, so where they can be safely in front to turn or move or go forward. So they tend to operate in these locations here, but you'll notice they come across almost all the way across too in this particular turn, and they may rest directly in front of us. So we're giving them the upper room, the space to operate safely and to move safely. So as a vehicle, we're pretty much going to stay in the non-green areas before this little line, the stopping line, or this kind of bike box area, okay? So you'll see right away, if I'm going to make a right turn, I don't see any space here to make a right turn. We're going to find that maybe in another picture where it got some broken green and white that allows us to do the turn, maybe not in before the intersection, but actually in the intersection, okay? So don't cross these. There'll be a better opportunity once you cross into the intersection again. If you're turning right on a green, you must signal and yield to the right for those bicyclists, okay? So Shero, this is kind of what we see a lot here, a lot of places where bicyclists and cars are now sharing the same lane. Again, a bicyclist can operate in your lane of travel. So that's what this is really. The symbol indicates that both cars and bicyclists can operate within the same space. So again, just give them their room, go around them safely when you can, and avoid conflicts with them. Another type of user is the scooters. Oops, I'm trying to move this stuff, my little things here. So motorcycles and mopeds. A motorcycle, of course, is a moped is more difficult to see than other vehicles. They can be hidden, especially in a blind spot, easily overlooked. It can be difficult to judge how far away the motorcycle is, how fast it's going. You must yield to oncoming motorcycle just as you would any other type of vehicle. If you are not sure how fast the motorcycle is going, it's safest to just wait until it passes to make a turn. When following a motorcycle, allow more distance between you, your vehicle, and the motorcycle than you would in other cars. So at a stop and you want to make a turn, you kind of see the cars coming. Well, motorcycle, it's hard to judge how fast. So what they're saying is just simply wait. Wait till they pass you and then reassess and then make that turn, okay? So don't jump in front of them. So larger vehicles, this is again some stuff that we got to deal with. Motorized homes, these are Class A kind of recreational vehicles. Big rig trucks, lots of trucks out there, especially today, doing lots of deliveries for us. So these vehicles, they're slower, right? They take more time to do things, maneuvering and turning, and maybe simply just climbing a hill. They're fully loaded, even empty weight, they still end up being heavier and slower. So they take more time, about 3 times the distance to stop than most smaller vehicles traveling at the same speed. Keep the following in mind when sharing the road with these large vehicles. So unsafe passing. So passing these vehicles is really a big issue. Be careful. It takes longer to pass a large vehicle. To complete up your pass as quickly as possible, don't stay alongside the vehicle. So in a truck, there's lots of no zone areas. The terminology comes in. And it's hard for truckers because they don't have backup cameras. They don't have great mirrors. They have devices that help them, but when you're alongside them, there are spots that they can't see. And especially right in front of their vehicle. Again, they're so high up that they may not even see your vehicle unless you're further ahead of them. So it's dangerous to stay in the blind spot too long because drivers don't know that they're there. that look for entire front of the vehicle in your rearview mirror before pulling in front of them. So create enough space where they can see you and you can see them. We like to see their headlights and grille in the rearview mirror before we jump back in front of them, okay? And when they're in kind of bad weather, you'll see the little picture there. The spray from those vehicles can really create kind of like a mini storm around your vehicle. It gets sometimes scary because it's hard to see. It creates this fog and mist, and it's very, very, very difficult, especially in poor weather. So create more space. Let them go, maybe, right? Wait till there's a better opportunity to pass, if at all possible, okay? So in the same, here we go. This is a scenario that could potentially happen. Again, can trucks make a nice tight turn? No, they got a big rig here. The trailer is kind of long and stiff. And so they tend to use the space that maybe we would be in. And so for us, if we were a driver, we might see this and we would stay back from our line enough to allow the trucker to make a safe turn. And so it's really good as a driver to be observant to other vehicles, especially big rigs. So these vehicles, of course, they cannot be seen directly behind you, besides them. When they're attempting to negotiate a turn, it's really good to help them make that turn safer. Observe their turn signals. Don't cut between the large vehicle and the curb or the shoulder. Again, they kind of go wide for turns. So if you squeak in between the curb and their turn, you're going to get cut off and hit pretty hard. So large vehicles may need to swing wide and use more than one lane to start or finish a turn. Be aware of how long the loads are, and they extend into adjacent lanes. Sometimes they're bigger and they get what's called wide load transports. And so they tend to extend. I've seen some that go much, much longer than the 53-foot lengths. And so it's real important. They have to have flags and all kinds of different signage. So it's real important, especially to watch these larger vehicles, okay? So of course, backing, here we go. You definitely don't want to be back behind a vehicle, especially when they need to move in this direction. Not a good place for that upper picture there of the, looks like a Ferrari that got crunched by a truck. So never cross behind a large vehicle, especially when they're backing. You know, they, again, are trying to do their job, their purpose is what they do. It's important for us to be alert to those, get away from those scenarios, maybe wait for them to complete their action before you do yours. So of course, large vehicles cannot be maintained their proper speed, especially climbing hills. They tend to really go slow, especially loaded. We travel a lot, and a lot of the hills they climb, they will go all the way over into the emergency lanes, the lanes, the shoulders, and drive in those maybe 10, 15 miles an hour, climbing some steep hills, okay? So for us as lighter cars, we tend to go around them, and so it's important to just be alert. They may have brake problems, and they may create some smoking situations where things are going on within their vehicle. So it's good just to stay clear of them. They know what they're doing. They've done this. And so if we see these situations, again, create more space, and then do not pass them until it's safe to do so. And here's the pilot cars I was talking about, these extremely large loads, oversized loads, long loads, wide loads. So sometimes they start with a pilot car, and that leads, and then they have a following pilot car, again, just telling vehicles, hey, there's a larger load that's maybe extended beyond the width of the now standard lanes that we need to be alert to. So if we see these vehicles oncoming especially, we may need to reduce our speed and move to the right as far as possible while staying in your lane. If you are following a pilot car, increase the following distance. Be cautious when you pass a pilot vehicle or the vehicle with the large load. So school buses, the other critical component of driving is kind of knowing these and how to operate around school buses. So they have similar lightings like a traffic light does. You'll notice they have the amber and the red lights. And what do they mean? We're going to go into that now. They may be equipped with stop arms that extend from the bus near the driver's window when the red lights begin to flash. So a flashing amber lights warn us about a traffic that, hey, the bus may be about to stop. So be ready, kind of be ready and ready to stop. on the roadway to load or unload children. Again, red now, it would be stopped. The stop arm would be out. Maybe the lights will be flashing, right? We don't want to get up really close to the vehicle, but we do want to stay back, allow the students, the folks to get on and off safely. And we'll talk about certain situations when we can and cannot go around the vehicle, okay? So where to stop really behind the vehicle or stay in front of the school bus while driving. So in your book, in your DMV manual, this is exactly kind of verbatim. So in many situations, when the lights are red, you're going to stop, okay? So first scenario, we've got a 2-lane road, either behind the bus or coming toward the bus. We're going to stop, period. So now we've got the shared left involved in the same 2-lane road. All lanes of travel behind or coming toward the bus will stop. Again, a 4-lane road now, all 4 cars, both directions, will stop. The only difference is this lower one, and that is simply if there's a physical median, something that truly separates the 2 flows of travel, like a median, a barrier of some kind, the only direction that needs to that would be allowed to continue forward without stopping would be the opposite direction. So you'll see that in number 4, okay? So along with the buses, well, sometimes we see when we travel to Arizona, they do a lot of farming, a lot of farm workers that jump on buses and they bring their workers to and from the different fields. And we have places here in Oregon too that were like this. Maybe even a church work bus, you know, you're going out to do some sort of activity, and so they tend to like to use buses. And so they'll keep those same flashing amber and flashing red lights that we need to follow. So even though it's not a school bus, it might be a worker or church bus, we still need to follow the same rules for these kind of stops too, okay? So if that bus is turning on our flashing amber or red lights, you must treat these the same as you would for a school bus. Now, public transit, again, this is kind of some Portland stuff here, just kind of showing you these things, because we got public transit in many locations. We do here, but not to the extent like we see in these pictures next. The public transit buses, they're a little bit different than a school bus. They don't have the amber lights and the red lights. We have a different kind of a search we're going to look for, okay? So these, of course, they tend to pull to a curb, they load and unload passengers, and we really don't need to stop for that bus. We can actually go around them if we wanted to. So vehicles approaching from the rear, they sometimes have a yield sign, so kind of an upside down triangle on the back of the bus. So if that's flashing, what it's really saying is, hey, I need to get back, the bus needs to get back into the lanes of travel, and you're required to yield to allow it to re-enter the traffic flows, okay? Let's see, I think, yeah, so I have a video. Unfortunately, I will again, it's us kind of following this bus, and I talked through the process. There's a yield sign. You can't quite see it here, but there's a yield sign, and that's what we were hoping to see turned on for the bus to re-enter from picking up and dropping off passengers. Many times what they do is they'll have a location on the right that's actually pulled away from the main flow. They started to create those now in bigger cities where the buses will have a safe stopping location that still keeps the traffic moving, but allows them to be safe as they continue their routes. So another type of vehicle then sign we need to be alert to is these slow moving triangle signs, kind of a slow vehicle. You'll see right away, we've got some farm equipment, and this again happens a lot in our farm communities around the state and other places where they've got this kind of diamond shape, kind of triangle shaped reflective sign that's behind a slow moving vehicle. So you've got to alert to it. You know, you really have to maybe wait for them to turn off onto a field or another side road. May or may not be able to get around the vehicle in some locations like this. So this emblem does contain some reflective material that is more easily and readily seen at nighttime. Again, be prepared to slow down, adjust your speed, especially when we see these on our roadways. So if you have like a canoe or a boat, you can see it's kind of extended well beyond the vehicle's length. So if you decide to move these kind of large boats and items, anything that extends beyond 4 feet beyond the end of your vehicle has to have a red flag. So this is a kind of a picture of that little 12-inch square. If like for me, when I would go to like Home Depot or Lowe's and I pick up some logs or wood or whatever I was going to work on, they have those available. So you don't really have to go buy something specifically. You could just ask for the reflective flag or the little tail flag that you can put and attach to your device. Okay. Okay, next. And now funeral processions. So funeral processions, of course, is a line of cars, usually led by a hearse. And so you'll see a series of cars behind the hearse, and usually they have their headlights on. It's one of the first clues that it's kind of a line of cars in a funeral procession. So they're exempt from certain rules of the road. So vehicles in that funeral procession may enter an intersection without stopping and do not have to obey traffic control devices. Other vehicles, again, must yield the right of way. If you're not a member of the funeral procession, it's against the law for you to jump it, get it, and just follow them along their route, okay? So if you want to be a part of it, don't get involved, don't get in the middle of it. All right, oh, emergency vehicles. So yep, next is emergency vehicles. Of course, we got lots of those emergency vehicles today, fire, ambulance, police, and all kinds. We must yield right of way to emergency vehicles such as fire trucks, police vehicles, and ambulances when they approach from any direction using a light or siren. When you see or hear an emergency vehicle, warning, you must immediately drive as close to the safely to the right of the road and stop. Do not stop in an intersection. Okay, so what I tell folks is when you hear the sirens and the sounds, start looking, listening, and especially if they're behind you or even in front of you, coming towards you, oncoming. Now, any place that would normally not be a place to park now becomes a place to park. So you quickly signal search and park, and even including, but don't hit and take out a bicyclist. So you can park in a bike lane at this point. Again, you're only there for a few moments to allow the emergency vehicle to get around you or come past you, okay? And if you're at an intersection, especially making a left turn, you're already all the way to the center. Stay there. Don't move. Let them go around you. They know where you are. It's not time to quickly make a lane change or jump to the right. Just stay in that position. After the emergency vehicle is passed, you must stay at least 500 feet behind the vehicle. So move over law, this is another kind of rule that's out there we need to kind of follow. More states are taking this on now, which is nice to see. So our law simply says you got to move over or reduce speed for stopped emergency vehicles. And now it goes even more, it's service vehicles. So someone may be picking up a car that's broke down. There's some activities on our highways and roads. Again, anybody providing service, emergency vehicles especially, police, fire, ambulance, you want to move over when you can. So if you're on a road with 2 or more lanes of traffic going in the same direction, you approach an emergency vehicle, and they may just be a little bit on the roadway. Sometimes they kind of block a little bit of the first lane, the slow lane. You want to move when you can, right? Signal and get over. This includes emergency vehicles, tow trucks, or roadside assistance vehicles that is stopped with lights flashing. You must change lanes so you do not drive next to the stopped vehicle. If you cannot make a lane change, like say it's only now a 2-lane road, opposite direction, you can't make a lane change, so now you're just simply going to reduce your speed from the posted speed by 5 miles an hour. And this will give the emergency vehicle as much space again. Now you move all the way to the left of your lane. That gives them more space so that they can operate and do what they're doing safely. So police stops, again, another great video. I wish I could show it to you guys. So things to think about in a police stop. Remember, stuff we got to think about. It's going to happen potentially. We may not use our turn signal, where we kind of roll a stop either at a stop sign or a signal light, And of course, we might get pulled over for those things. So if by chance you get pulled over, you want to pay attention. It's really important. Keep calm, right? Drive as close to the safety as you can to the right side of the road. Just like an emergency, you're going to find a place safely to park and stop, turn off your engine. I tell folks, just keep the hands on the wheel, let the officer tell you what to do, roll the windows down, talk to them, just go through the process of figuring out what they need you to do first, and then they'll inform you of your infractions and other things. And if you have a good conversation with them about what's happening, sometimes it quickly becomes a nice little training session and a little stern warning versus a ticket, okay? What we don't want you to do, though, is to stop in an intersection or pull into the center median of a highway, okay? So shared left is not a place to be. You don't want to stop in the middle of the intersection. That's not a great place to be. It's really dangerous for not only you, but also for the police too, okay? So limit our movements once they're kind of exposed to this kind of stop. Really, movement of any kind can be dangerous for you and the officer. Keep your hands on that steering wheel. Passengers, really just keep your hands in plain view, either up high or behind the seat if you're behind you. Show your driving privilege and or vehicle registration only when requested, okay? Stay in your vehicle. We don't get out. That's an old tactic we used to do when we were older. My parents might do that. Your grandparents might do that. But today we stay in our vehicle. If it's dark, turn the vehicle's interior lights on. Make sure they can see. Don't argue with the officer at the scene. Traffic violations and traffic crimes charged against you are decided in court. They're just doing their job. You cause the infraction, take the infraction, take the warning, take the citation, whatever it is. You can fight your fight in court. This is not the time to do that, okay? So work zones. Driving through a work zone can be challenging. Construction workers' equipment may be close to you, the traffic. Vehicles may enter the road and cause unexpected slowing in these areas. Work zones can change the flow of traffic. So right away you can see the color of the signs now. Instead of a yellow or a white background, they're bright orange. So black and orange is all construction. Similar type signs too. And they have their own unique signs, but sometimes they take their own signs. So they may look like a speed sign that was white, but now it's black and orange. And so it's giving us maybe a drop in speed or control in speed. They may have lane markings, drums, cones, barricades, even flaggers will guide you safely through the work area. Definitely slow down and pay attention in those work areas. Work zones may have temporary speeds posted that apply whether you're workers or not workers or present. Doesn't matter if they're working or not working, they're going to have all of those same signs until that work is completed. The work zone speed applies until you see a sign indicating the end of the work zone or another posted speed. There may be fewer lanes or the lanes may be narrow. White lines or temporary markers separate lanes going in the same direction. Yellow lines or temporary markers separate lanes going in the opposite direction. So it's kind of the same. It's just that we're going to have different colored signs for different things we need to do in that work zone. Sometimes a sign for a flagger ahead of you may show a symbol of a flagger holding a sign or the words flagger ahead. Flaggers use the sign and hand signals to tell you which direction to travel, to slow down, or even to stop. Follow their instructions, obey them as you would any other traffic control device. They pretty much take over the work area. You need to follow. What I tell folks is just be careful in those construction zones, work areas, because even a worker may step into your lane of travel. You got to be careful. You got to be alert. You may have to move out of the way, okay? And that takes care of this chapter. Yep.
1 second. It's still,
Yeah,
I think it's
fine.
still starting.
No worries.
All right. It's all you, Mike.
All right, so chapter 5, let's talk about railroad crossings, light rail, and street cars. So railroad crossings, they have different kind of signage we might not see so much unless you're crossing or near a railroad. So railroad crossing signs, they have pavement markings, usually with an X, indicates a railroad crossing that's coming. Sometimes they have the RR in the middle. The crossbuck sign is kind of what we see in this first picture with what we call an advanced warning. So usually warning signs, remember warnings are always yellow and black. So here's an advanced warning sign that you might see approaching a railroad track. Only cross the tracks if you're sure you can completely clear the crossing without stopping on the tracks. Never try to beat a train. Trains move much, much faster than they appear and definitely can't stop quickly. So real important, each railroad crossing has their own unique controls. So some have a stop, some have a yield. The ones like maybe at the casino, they would have the bars and the lights. But about 90% of railroad crossings have nothing. So really we need to yield, search, and be safe before you cross a railroad crossing. So when required to stop, do so at the line. If there is no stop line, stop at least about 15 feet from the tracks, the nearest rail. Stop before railroad tracks when flashing. Those lights are active, so it's kind of a clue. The lights are flashing, the bars are starting to move. A crossing gate may be lowered, so again, stop when it starts to move at all. A train is clearly visible or is so close to the crossing that it would be a hazard for you to try to cross. A stop sign is posted. So again, if you see that sign, stop, follow the directions, or even a flagger signals you to stop. So maybe a worker that's on the track and they're saying, hey, wait, don't go, okay? So a railroad advanced sign. So here's some advanced signs you can kind of see here that that a railroad is coming. So again, here's the first clues and second clues, and you'll notice the stop signs actually got some lights in it. And I do see a bar up here, so it looks like there'll be a bar coming down. A railroad crossbuck assembly may include a yield or stop sign. Obey the posted sign. It's real important to pay those. If there is more than one track, a little sign below the crossbuck will say how many tracks you're about to cross. So 2 tracks or 3 tracks or 4 or whatever. And again, it's times 2, so you're crossing really a double line of tracks, okay? So railroad crossings, again, this is more of the lights and the bars, kind of a more active location, unlike our, more like our the one by the casinos. We have those active lights and bars. So again, once those gates start moving, you want to yield and stop, wait until the bus or the train completes its motion through the area. And then really you don't continue forward until those lights and bars completely return back up and off. All school buses and some school activity vehicles must stop at railroad crossings, even if there isn't a railroad car coming. They have to stop. They're required by law. So they will actually stop even on a track that's inactive, maybe inactive for 10, 15, 20 years. They're still required to stop. Other vehicles or large trucks may also be required to stop in those locations too, okay? So light rail and street cars. So we talked about the buses, but now we got the railing system. So this is another type of transportation. Again, it's kind of a train. It's on a separate track, generally in bigger towns like Portland is one of those locations. We've been on the Max and the TriMet, and they're great. They're great ways to get around town, but it's also a place where we can get into some serious trouble too. So these, again, vehicles cannot stop quickly. When sharing the road with a light rail or streetcar, slow down. Definitely search both ways before you cross any track or intersection. Never turn in front of an approaching light rail train or streetcar. When approaching tracks at an intersection, stay behind the stop line and never stop in or on the tracks. We had a situation in Hillsborough, I can't remember, it's been probably 10 years, 15 years. Fire truck needed to get to an emergency, and you know what? He didn't make it across the light rail, and the light rail train actually hit the fire truck and caused some serious damage. So Even an emergency vehicle should not do the same thing we're telling you guys not to do. So it's important to follow the rules. Light rail, check for trains before changing lanes. Use caution when passing or stop train or streetcar. Watch for pedestrians, passengers that may be loading or unloading. They might jump into your lane, so just be careful. Wait for your light to turn green when making a left turn. When parking, park behind the line separating the parking lane area from the track. If no stripe is present, allow at least 4 feet outside of the rails. So just park away, far enough away to allow the light rail to go through safely next to your parked car. And that's chapter 5. There. Okay, here we go. Chapter 6. Parking and stopping. So several types of parking we have to be able to park several different ways as a driver. So one method of parking is parallel parking between a couple of vehicles. So you kind of see this picture of the white car backing into this space between these 2 other cars. There are different types of parking when leaving a parked or stopped position. Check your blind spot, mirrors, and yield to all other traffic. Park in the direction vehicles are moving in the lane. Park parallel to and no more than 12 inches from the curb. If there are no curb, park as close as possible to the edge of the shoulder. If your parking areas are marked, your wheels must be within the marked spaces. So here would be a marked space. And as long as we're in this space, we're golden, we're good, okay? If you're outside of this space, you could get a parking ticket that simply says you're parked incorrectly. So you want to park correctly. So angled parking, a lot of angled parking spaces. Again, videos on here, I can get you my presentation. There's links to these. You can watch the videos of how to do these kind of parkings, okay? So angled parking, lots of angled parking spaces around our shopping centers and malls and places like that. Sometimes they're in more what we call wide streets. So it's an easier way for vehicles to park versus trying to do what's called park along the street. When driving large vehicles, avoid parking in spaces that obstruct traffic on the roadway. Signs may be posted to indicate when parking area is reverse angle or back in only. So here is a head in angled. A back in would simply mean you're going forward, but then you're going to back into the space. Again, signage would have to be there. I've only found one place in all my travels that we had a back in angled space. I don't think we have one of those here in Oregon. But again, you may be in places that would have those. So hill parking is another challenge that we got to think about. So if you tend to park on hills or you live in a hilly part of the country or the state, you may need to set your wheels the correct way. So on hill parking, you want to turn and set your brake on. Leave your vehicle in gear if it has a manual transmission, or in park for an automatic transmission. Turn your front wheels as indicated. And so I'll give you kind of a hand presentation here of how to do that. So to prevent the vehicle from rolling downhill in case of brake failure of any kind. So if you're against a curb and you're faced downhill, you want the wheels to go toward the curb. So that way, if the car breaks free, it hits the curb and stops, okay? So now you're uphill, and just kind of raise your hands and think, okay, uphill, my hands go either left to the roadway, out to the center of the street, or to the right. It really wants to go out. So now it's the right rear tire, as you would creep backwards, would hit the curb and stop the car from moving. Without a curb, again, you want to turn your wheels toward the edge of the roadway so the car would spin in and out, both facing downhill with no curb or uphill with no curb. It's toward the edge of the roadway. So parking spaces for persons with disabilities, you'll see these kind of marked in many locations around. Again, it gives our folks with disabilities a chance to park in a much closer parking space, allows them to entrance into places that make it easier for them to to get in and out of their vehicle and not have to park so far away from larger lots. So Oregon will issue a special parking permit to persons with disabilities or groups that transport persons with disabilities. Spaces may have the disabled symbol on the ground as well as a blue sign with the symbol placed in front of the space that you're in. It is illegal to park in a space marked for persons with disabilities unless you have that valid disabled parking permit. So if you don't have the placard or the little, we used to call it handy, the handicap placard, basically you would stick in your car. If you don't have those, and it's not the appropriate dates, because they usually date them and they're only good for valid for so long. If you don't have that, you can't legally park in these locations. So important to look for those. So places where we aren't allowed to park. So the rules about parking and stopping may apply whether you are in your vehicle or not. So here, you cannot park, you cannot stop your vehicle in any of the following locations listed here. This does not apply though if your vehicle breaks down. So you can kind of see the triangle. This is a reflective triangle that may be out in a scene where your car is broke down and you're trying to alert traffic behind you. So this is a reflective triangle that you might carry in your trunk. So if your car breaks down, it breaks down. You don't really have a choice. You are where you are. You park where you can park, and then you would start to call services and maybe get some folks to come help you move your car, get it off the roadway. So no parking rules though. Look at the vehicle, you'll see the car already. He's on the sidewalk. So that's definitely not a place we want to park our car. So in a traffic lane, on a highway, street, or road. So in a place that normally is used for travel is not a place for us to park. Within the middle of an intersection. So think about a four-way intersection sitting right there in the middle. Not a place for us to park. On the roadside of any parked vehicle. It's called double parking. We don't do double parking here. On the sidewalk, just like we see here, crosswalk, bike lane, or path. On any railroad or light rail tracks. On a bridge, overpass, or in a tunnel between separate roads of a divided highway, near construction or road work when stopping or parking would interfere with traffic. So remember, all of these are the no parking rules, but if your car breaks down, you park wherever you need to safely, and then we work on getting it fixed and moved, okay? So challenges for us as parkers is we're finding a legal location, but notice right away the picture here, somebody parked a little too close to the fire hydrant. And so because there was a nearby fire, the fire department has the right, and they will, as you can see, to break through the windows to get to the fire hydrant because you're a little too close. So again, no parking rules apply. Any place where official signs, traffic control devices, painted diagonal stripes, or other pavement markings prohibit parking in front of a public or private driveway. I don't think you want somebody to block your driveway so you can never leave your house or road. Within 10 feet of the fire hydrant, I don't think that car qualifies. Within 15 feet of the driveway of an entrance to a fire station on the same side of the street, or within 75 feet of the opposite side of the street. So here, notice our cars again, they're on the tracks, too close to the tracks here. Within 20 feet of marked or unmarked crosswalks, at an intersection, within 50 feet of a traffic signal or sign if your vehicle hides the signal or sign from view. Within 50 feet of the nearest rail of the railroad or light rail crossing, within 7.5 feet of the railroad or light rail tracks when it interferes with the train. So again, emergency parking, if your vehicle breaks down, and it may, many vehicles do, they have problems, and you have no choice, you may temporarily stop or park in areas where it is usually not allowed, as long as the vehicle does not create a hazard. If you must stop or pull off the road, turn on your hazard lights. Warn other drivers. Use those other devices like here, the safety triangle, reflective cones or other things. There's lots of stuff now, new technologies come out. I've even seen kind of collapsible lights that can be out now that reflect, especially at night, flares even. Whatever it is that helps other drivers, warns other drivers, we need to do that. If necessary, if you may park a vehicle on the shoulder of the highway, if the passing traffic has enough room to get by. If your vehicle cannot be seen from 200 feet in each direction, you may need to warn approaching traffic. This can be done with flares and signs and, again, signals. Flaggers placed at least 200 feet apart from your vehicle in each direction. If you must leave your vehicle unattended, turn off the engine, remove the key, set your brake, and turn on your hazard lights. There you go. That's chapter 6. Come on, start. There it is. Got it?
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
Good, good. So chapter 7, this is the safe and responsible driving chapter. Covers a whole multitude of stuff we got to cover. So defensive driving. So really, we want to be a safe driver. So to be a safe driver, we have to be a defensive driver, being alert, watching for other traffic, watching for other folks. Being alert to their actions will help us be more reactive to things that we need to do to keep us safe. So know how to adjust your driving to allow for problems with your vehicle. The type of road surface, poor weather, heavy traffic, poor lighting, and your own physical, mental, and emotional condition is just as important too. You must be able to see what is to your front, side, or rear of your vehicle. Think about it. It just snowed and your car is completely blocked. All your windows are blocked. You have to be able to see to the front, the sides, and the rear, which simply means you got to scrape your windows and clean it to make sure you can clearly see. Don't load or equip your vehicle in any way that blocks what you can see. Even those stickers, remember stickers in windows or objects that may block your view, that can limit your view especially. Safety belts are important, right? Device we got to use. Safety belt use is mandatory in Oregon for all drivers and passengers in all available seating positions. Doesn't matter. It's the driver, you're the passenger, rear passengers, you have to wear a safety belt. A properly worn safety belt reduces the chances of injury in a crash. Do not leave slack in the lap or the shoulder portion of the belt. Never put your shoulder strap under your arm or behind your back. That definitely reduces the ability of the safety belt to keep you safe from moving forward into your steering wheel. Child restraints, especially the kids, are really critical. It's important to know kind of the age and their weight and height based on limitations of the seats and sort of. So child passengers must be restrained in approved child safety seats until they are 8 years of age or at least 4 feet 9 inches in height. Infants must ride rear facing until they reach both 1 year of age and about 20 pounds. Communicating with other drivers. So crashes often occur when one driver doesn't see another vehicle or a driver does something unexpected. You can let other drivers know what you plan to do or where you are by signaling before you changing direction or lanes. Use your brake lights to indicate you're slowing or stopping, turning your headlights on, using your horn as a reasonable warning, using your hazard lights when needed. Avoiding a crash. So 3 types of ways to avoid a crash: stopping quickly, turning quickly, and speeding up. So stopping quickly. If you have to, have enough distance to stop, apply the brakes. Be sure to read your vehicle's owner's manual on how to properly use the brakes. Turning quickly, so kind of avoiding doing some sort of maneuver. In most cases, you can turn the vehicle more quickly than you can stop it. Scan the area ahead. This will help you identify potential escape routes If you will not stop in time to avoid a crash, turn away from it. And then speeding up. Sometimes it's best to speed up to avoid a crash. This may happen when another driver is about to hit you from the side or from behind, and there's room ahead of you to get out of that dangerous situation. So driving off the roadway, you'll see this picture here. It's a good example of a car that's not on the roadway, not really safely on the roadway. So don't panic, that's the biggest thing. Don't brake, slow down until you can get back on the roadway. Really, you just gotta approach this. You can make it by simply turning slowly and lightly moving forward, get a good grip on the steering wheel. This will help the vehicle eventually get up and upright back onto the paved road portion. Don't turn sharply, or you may cross the road and now go to the other side because you're going from the right now to the left too quickly, and will go into oncoming traffic. So here we got an oncoming car that may be drifting closer to the center lane, which would now affect you. So pull to the right as far as possible, slow down, and warn the other driver that you're with your horn or lights, but never pull into the opposing lane. The oncoming driver may turn back sharply into that lane. It may, in most cases, steering to the shoulder or ditch is safer than risking a head-on crash. Okay. So of course, lots of animals on our roadways today. So they are just like, you know, a dog or a cat. They can be unpredictable. We got to watch signs, of course. We might have a warning sign about elk and deer and all kinds of things. But be careful, right? They may jump or dart right in front of your vehicle. So if you hit or injure a domestic animal, stop and make a reasonable effort to check for injuries. What you can do may depend on traffic hazards or the animal's behavior. Immediately report an injury to the animal's owner. This would be like a cat or a dog. If you're unable to locate the owner, you must report the incident to the local law enforcement. So now you hit a deer out in the middle, you really do need to report that, call, let them know, hey, I hit a deer on highway such and such at this point, and then that at least starts the process so that they can do whatever they need to do, recover or remove that animal from the roadway. So here's another type of animal. We see a lot of horseback riding, so that's another scenario we got to be careful with. Horses can get spooked, right? So think about it. You're driving up behind them or alongside of them, and we really got to be careful. The riders may say to us, hey, wait, slow down, you know, kind of be cautious, let us cross safely. So stop your vehicle, though, if a person riding on that horseback is leading or an animal and they raise their hand, or it's obvious that the animal is being frightened by you, unless stopping would cause a crash. A raised hand means the animal is frightened. Do not use your horn or make another loud, sudden noise near the animal. It could spook them. It could eject the rider from the animal. So another hazardous condition could be weather, right? Visibility is poor. You got snow and you got rain. So when visibility is reduced, the road surface conditions may be covered with snow or ice. This may require you to slow down. So a way to think about it is anytime our visibility is poor, the road conditions become poor, slow down, reduce your speed, create more of a cushion between you and front vehicle traffic. So using headlights, normally they're used to see, especially at nighttime, but we like to see them on at daytime also. They definitely must be turned on from sunset to sunrise. Lights also must be on at any time conditions make it difficult to see people or vehicles 1,000 feet ahead. If you're using your high beams, you must dim your lights when an oncoming vehicle is within 500 feet. Dim your lights when following another vehicle within 350 feet. Headlight glare in the rearview mirror can blind another driver. When you are required to dim your headlights, other auxiliary lights such as fog lights must be off. These extra lights make it difficult for oncoming drivers to see. So for me at nighttime, if I have an oncoming car, I got my brights, I quickly just turn them off. I don't really, it's hard to tell the feet thing. So It's important to know the numbers for your test, but when you're driving, I just dim them until they clear, back on to brights unless I see another oncoming car. And then following, they just need to be really far ahead of me before I will turn my brights on. And again, just a visual as we're driving, especially at night. At night, your response to hazards is slower because you cannot see what's behind you, beyond your headlights. You can reduce the danger if you adjust your driving habits accordingly. The following are suggestions for safe driving at night. So looking slightly to the right of oncoming lights, watch the road edge or fog line. This will give you some clues as where to be. This will guide you or guard you against a headlight glare. Check your headlights, taillights, and turn signal lights often to make sure they're working and lenses are clean. So good idea just to kind of do a light check around your vehicle, maybe once a month or so, just to check to make sure those are functioning and working correctly. Be careful when you're passing at night or dawn or dusk. If an oncoming vehicle does not have its headlights on, you may not see it until it's too late. Be alert for bicyclists, pedestrians, as they are harder to see, especially at night wearing dark clothes. So already you can kind of hardly see a little bit of the bike's wheel here. I don't even know if there's a person on the bike. And again, at nighttime, here we go, darker lighted cars, but the lighted cars we can see. So at night, it's very, very difficult. You definitely want to definitely use your headlights and use good vision. So fog, dust, and smoke, here's some other conditions that potentially could come our way. If you drive into fog, dust, or smoke, or any area of low visibility, use headlights, put them on, especially low beam. Light from high beams will reflect back, causing glare and making it more difficult to see ahead. As visibility decreases, slow down. Be alert for slow or stopped vehicles and other obstacles. Be prepared to pull over and stop. If you choose to pull off the road, pull as far as you can to the right and turn on your lights, your headlights, your hazard lights. So rain, of course, we got lots of rain here in Oregon, especially. Rain impairs our ability to see ahead and increases the braking distance needed to stop your vehicle. When the roads are wet, apply the brakes sooner and more gently than usual. Even a summer shower can cause slippery roads when rain mixes with oil and dirt. So over a long stretch of dry, we get this, cars aren't all nicely, tightly sealed up. They tend to drip a little here, a little there. So over time, you've got oil on top of a dry road. And then as soon as it rains, now the oil and the water separate. And guess what? The oil raises to the top, and now we've got a slippery road. So it's good to wait maybe 15, 20 minutes after a good rain to let those oils now slide off into the drains and go off of the roadways. Increase your visibility to other motorists by turning on your headlights. When your windshield wipers are on, do not use cruise control in wet conditions. Keep your windows clear of moisture. So using your defroster, cruise control, it really has got to be poor, anything but poor conditions, really. Good visibility, not sleet, rain, or snow, not a good time to do that, especially not in town. Usually it's on highways we would turn on cruise control. So vehicle tires, sometimes they would hydroplane. So it's kind of like floating on top. Your tires will catch the top surface of the water and it will remove itself from the traction of the road, which now you can turn your wheels, but you're going nowhere. You're just going straight or forward. This would stop and can be reduced loss of traction. So slow down when you're on wet roads, especially heavy rains like we've been having today. If you drive through water and the brakes get wet, gently apply the brakes while driving slowly until they begin to respond. It's best to do this as soon as you can after driving through water. Do not drive through flooded areas. High water may cause loss of control or the engine may stall. Snow and ice. Snow and ice also impairs your ability to steer or see, ability to increase the braking distance needed to stop your vehicle drive at slower speeds, and leave more room between your vehicle and other vehicles ahead of you. Keep the windows clear of snow, ice, and fog, and do not use the cruise control. Pay attention to weather forecasts and warnings. We like to look at tripcheck.org. It's a nice, quick way to see if our path in some direction may have snow or rain or sleet or anything dangerous in ahead of us. It's a good way to look, especially if you're planning a trip of some kind. So when police or highway officials say driving is very hazardous to stay off the roads, guess what? You probably should stay off the roads. So if you must drive on snow and ice, follow these simple tips. Gently press on the gas. The car's traction, if you accelerate too fast, you're just going to cause your wheels to spin. You're not going to go anywhere. So just really light on the gas, good controls on the brake. Gently press and release the brakes, of course. Don't slam on the brakes. It's going to cause you to skid, unfortunately. So you don't want to do those. Get the feel of the road away from traffic when you're starting to drive, especially on these packed roads like you see in this picture here. You really got to get the sense of what it takes, because now you're not really on this nice surfaced road. You've got a pack on top of that surface road, which acts as the roadway for you. It may or may not allow you to grip the roadway. Depends on the tire conditions too. So turn your brake lights so you can and will know what to expect. Make turns at reduced steady speeds to avoid a skid. Watch for dangerous spots ahead of you. A bridge or a shaded area may freeze first, and then when the rest of the road is free of ice. When you go uphill or on a snow or ice covered road, apply just enough power to maintain motion without causing the wheels to spin. So kind of get the motion going and keep it going until you get up and clear the hill that you're about to climb. So skidding is another issue we got to worry about. Skids occur when the tires can no longer grip the roadway. Driving too fast for conditions causes skids. If your vehicle begins to skid, stay off the brakes until the vehicle slows. Your brakes will not be effective. Steer in the direction you want the vehicle to go. As soon as the vehicle begins to straighten out, turn the steering wheel back the other direction. If you do not do this, your vehicle may just swing around the other direction and could start a new skid. So basically, if you lose direction, just aim, turn back the direction you want to go, and you just kind of balance it till it softens, and eventually you'll end up driving the straight direction you were hoping to go. Continue to correct the steering left and right until the vehicle again is moving down the road. So change in traction devices. Here's a picture of kind of what change would look like on a car's tires, the standard car's tires. And then here's what studs would look like. So these would be studs that would be in the tire, giving additional traction. So if you enter a roadway or a road or a highway that says traction devices are required, here's what traction devices could look like. So many times during the winter months, they require you to either have traction tires, snow tires, or carry chains with you. And so it's important to have either of those as you make these entrances into these roadways. Part of good planning, especially if you decide to go into the higher elevations. So driving dangerous behaviors. Driving requires our full attention. There may be distractions that may prevent you from focusing on driving. Our mental and emotional state, our physical health affects the way you drive. Overall health, fatigue, and even emotions such as anger or worry are a few of the conditions that can make you an unsafe driver. If you find yourself going through the motions of driving without really being aware of what you are doing or what's happening around you, it's time to stop, maybe for a rest, take a break, take a break for the rest of the day. So distracted driving, we've got lots of distracted driving, unfortunately, guys. You know, we've got good laws today. The laws are there. They're really a big wake-up call. $1,000 first offense, unfortunately. It goes up to $2,500, I believe, by the third offense. So we don't want to be distracted. You're a new driver. You already have enough responsibility to drive. Learning to drive is already a challenge. So adding a cell phone or another type of distraction is not a good thing. So try to avoid any relations. I always have my phone in the glove box. I put it away, turn it off, right? Someplace where it's out of reach while you're learning to drive. It's illegal, though, for drivers under the age of 18 to talk or text on a cell phone or other device while operating a vehicle. Turn it off, put it away, anywhere out of your way. Drivers 18 or older, they must use a hands-free device. So it's important to get a device, maybe mounted in the center on the windshield out of the way, where you cannot really activate it or use it. You're just using your voice to communicate through it if you need to. It is illegal to have a TV, tablet, or other video display device in front of the driver. So anything that really interferes with driving, remember, you're driving, you're not here to watch television, you're here to drive. And so those devices can bring other distractions we don't need to see. Another type of distractions, we don't really think about it, but it does happen, and it's kind of interesting. But yep, we got people maybe shaving or putting on makeup, and really just some crazy stuff going on in the car before you get going, reading a book, a newspaper. I did a little survey several years back, just traveling through Portland. I was a passenger, my wife was driving. I just simply looked to my right as we were stopping and driving past all these cars that should be driving, and about 60 out of 100 cars had their head down in some other distracted form, which is not good. It's dangerous to do any activity that takes your eyes off the road while driving, such as removing clothing, applying makeup, reading, eating, or drinking. Do not hold a person, pet, or package in your lap or arms. Do not take your eyes off the road to turn around to deal with the needs of passengers, especially children or pets that may be in the rear seats. If you must give attention to these passengers or animals, pull off on the side of the road. Deal with it at that point, but not while you're driving. So road rage is a big scenario we got to think about too. This happens when frustration and anger goes between drivers. Maybe a scene where someone cuts you off, and now the anger escalates to a different level. So this angry or aggressive behavior by other drivers, we call it road rage. These behaviors may include driving in an illegal, unsafe, or threatening manner. Shouting and rude gestures are one of those. If you see an aggressive driver, stay out of the way. Simply just stay out of the way.
Hey, Mike.
Yep.
We had a question I missed earlier.
Sure.
Me had asked, does that include speakerphone?
If it's connected to your, so first question is, how old are you? The next question is, if it's tied to your phone and your car, yes, that's acceptable, because now newer cars actually use Bluetooth technology to now be hands-free. As long as your phone is not in your hands, you're good, okay?
Great, thanks, Mike.
Yep, good question. So road rage, again, something we got to be watchful for. These behaviors may include driving illegally. They may drive unsafe or threatening manners. They may shout and also present rude gestures. So if you see aggressive driver, definitely stay out of the way, guys. It's really important to just be alert. So maybe we did something in the wrong and we know we did it, but now that driver is trying to come at you or attack you. We want to stay out of the way of that, stay clear of that. Okay, don't challenge them at all. Increasing our speed or trying to outmaneuver them or cut them off. We've seen this many a time, unfortunately, on TV. It's not a good situation that can end up very, very deadly for many people. So of course, if we're tired and we're drowsy, this is another scenario that could happen for us, especially as younger drivers. We tend to not get enough sleep at night, maybe late night, trying to do all our homework and schoolwork and different activities that may be starting to get back online now. So if you're constantly yawning, maybe heads nodding, heavy eyelids, these are some quick signs to you that maybe you're having difficulty staying in your own lane. Some of the warning signs, you may be falling asleep, especially at the wheel, not good. So when tired or sleepy, you are slower to react, likely to make poor judgment decisions, and less aware of changing road and traffic conditions. Be sure you're alert and well rested before you travel. Okay. So good health, we talked about the physical, we talked about the mental, really health too, because there may be some medical conditions that might also be a factor related to you too. We all take some sort of medication. Some of us have different procedures. We may take a prescription drugs that help us kind of alleviate some pains and different things. So it's important to know how those affect you when you start to drive. So physical health can impair your ability to drive safely. If you're sick or recovering from an illness, consider if you really feel up to driving, especially on a long trip. Some medical conditions may cause serious problems that impact safe driving, such as loss of muscle control, decreased reaction, confusion, and/or unpredictable loss of consciousness. Talk to your doctor about the effect of conditions that you may have on driving. Hearing plays an important role when driving. A change in the sound coming from your tires warns you of road surface changes. A difference in sound of your engine may warn you of a problem. We had a student in our class for this North Bend area. They drove their car 2 days ago and it sounded great. The next time they hopped in the car a couple days later, it started to make a weird engine noise. Well, it turned out that the engine was having some serious problems and it ended up becoming they had a leak in the oil and they seized their engine. So it's important to pay attention. You don't want to drive your car in a bad situation like this. So really pay attention to how your car sounds. Sound also can tell you when another vehicle may be in your blind spot or of an approaching emergency vehicle. Avoid the use of headphones that may reduce your hearing ability. Impaired driving. We're going to go into impaired now. Never get behind the wheel after drinking alcohol or using other impaired drugs. Leave the driving to someone else. Alcohol is the most common intoxicant involved when drivers are impaired. Intoxicants include a wide range of inhalants, drugs, both illegal and legal drugs. You may be arrested for driving under the influence of these drugs or inhalants, the same as for alcohol. Both prescription and over-the-counter medications may impair your driving ability. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about the side effects and how they could impact your ability to drive safely. Oregon's implied consent law simply means that by driving a motor vehicle, you have agreed that you will take a breath, blood, or urine test when asked by the police if you are arrested for driving under the influence of intoxicants. So notice DUI, that's what they say. If you're under 21, you will fail the test if you have a blood alcohol content reading of any amount. So you cannot have any alcohol if you're under 21. If you're 21 and older, now we've got a limit, 0.08. Blood alcohol content of 0.08 or more could get you a ticket driving under the influence. Under Oregon's open container law, it's illegal to drink alcohol or have an open bottle or other container with alcohol in it while you are in a vehicle on a road. Any open bottles or containers should be in the trunk. So no open containers. They should really be removed from the vehicle. If not, just get them in the trunk out of your reach, okay? So external passengers, it's hard to see that little picture there, but basically we've got a whole group of kids really in the trunk or in the bed of a truck. So anyone regardless of age should not ride in a pickup, bed, or any external part of the vehicle. Oregon law prohibits anyone under 18 years of age from riding on the hood, fender, running board, or other external part of a vehicle, including the pickup bed. You cannot carry a dog on an external part of the vehicle, including a pickup bed, unless the dog is protected by a framework carrier or other device that keeps it from falling from the vehicle. Do not hold an animal in your lap or in your arms when driving. So some of it, vehicle equipment failures. Most equipment failures can be avoided with good maintenance. an unmaintained vehicle can become unsafe to a driver. So just take care of your car, change the oil, do the regular maintenance, check your owner's manual, right? There may be times when the vehicle equipment fails, resulting in a driving emergency. That calls for you to take fast action. So sometimes when the breaks down like a tire blowout or some other mechanical problem, you may need to be able to manage your car safely so you can get off the road. So tire blowouts, if the front tire blows, steering will be difficult. There may be a strong pull to the side. A rear blowout causes the back of the vehicle to weave or sway. If you have a blowout, grip the wheel, steer it firmly, slow down gradually, pull off to the side of the road, and get there safely. Brake failure is another type. So brakes are failing, try to pump the brakes. This may help build up some pressure that might be there. Try shifting to a lower gear. So if it's column or a floor, shift down, slowly apply the parking brake if necessary. So sometimes you see in the picture, he's got an emergency brake. Squeeze that trigger and that now becomes a little hand brake, okay? So use your horn or lights to warn others that you're out of control. Once you have slowed, ease onto the shoulder. If our headlights go out, of course, this is a big thing, especially at nighttime. Turn the headlights on and off, check the switch, make sure it's working. Turn other lights such as high beams, make sure they're working. Driving lights or other hazard lights just to see if they're functioning, what's working, what's not working. This may give you enough light to guide you off the roadway. Slow down and ease onto the shoulder. Deal with that problem the next day, fix it tomorrow. That way you can get home safely. You really can't drive at night without headlights. So power steering, of course, if it goes out, it tends to cause, again, a steering, it becomes stiff, it's harder to move. You want to grip the wheel, steer while the car is moving, because while it's moving, it's a whole lot easier to turn versus when it's stopped, okay? So slow down, and again, ease onto the shoulder, get off the roadway. There's an accelerator sticking, so that means you're going faster and faster and faster. So search for an escape path, shift the vehicle into neutral, use an open palm to avoid shifting into another gear that's not the right direction. Steer smoothly while braking, pull off the road when it's safe to do so. And fuel saving techniques, so here's some fuel saving techniques. Drivers can improve gas mileage or save fuel by using these techniques. Drive steadily and avoid exceeding posted speed limits. Avoid rapid starts and stops. Avoid unnecessary idling. Combine errands into a single trip instead of making multiple trips in one day. Just try to do them in one round versus multiple. And properly maintain your vehicle at all times. That's going to help you save a lot of money over the long haul, okay? Whew. There you go, guys. We made it. Did we make the time? Yep, 10 minutes to spare.
Even better, Mike. Good job.
Woo.